With the start of the new year comes the Lunar New Year, a holiday for families. On this day, families come together, cook delicious food, and have a good time. But 32-year-old Jiahan isn't happy. She is an out-of-work freelancer, but most would say that she is unemployed. As she is cooking for the guests who have yet to arrive, her mother is watching a cute video of her grandson. But Jia is irritated that they are getting in her way and eating the food she cooked before everyone arrives. When she suggests that her parents should cook the food since they are eating it, Jia's mother reminds her that cooking is the least she could do since she lives at home and doesn't even pay rent. Jia's sister, Jimin, arrives with her family and her mother embraces her granddaughter. Jimin's husband is carrying the grandson and Jimin is exhausted from the trip and wants to sit down. Jia appears out of the shadows to greet her little sister. With an almost fake smile, Jia says she is happy to see her and hands her a flower print apron. Jimin responds by noting that the apron looks great on Jia and mocks her relationship status by saying all she needs to do now is walk down the aisle. But Jia doesn't find the joke funny. She insists Jimin puts on the apron to help her cook with a lifeless expression. Jia's mom is not impressed and hits her. Jia just wants someone else to cook. But Jimin's husband points out that Jimin is tired enough as is, suggesting she is pregnant with a third child. This is big news for the family and they start eating. Soon after, Jia is outside smoking and angry at her sister for her life and suggesting she meet with a guy she knows. Jia's sulking is interrupted by an unknown man who comments on Jia still having a foul mouth. This man is eating chicken breast in a smoking area, which confuses Jia. The man reveals that his name is Mincheol Jin and that he used to live next door and wear headphones a lot. Jia initially doesn't remember him, but then realizes that he used to be a scrawny gamer kid. Mincheol didn't think he changed that much though, but Jia insists that he changed a lot and notes that him eating chicken breast in a smoking area is strange. Mincheol explains he is here because his family wasn't happy with him not eating the Lunar New Year food because they had too many calories. Jia recalls that Mincheol is 32 years old, just like her. They used to live in the same building and were childhood friends, but not by choice. Mincheol was the shy kid that didn't get along with anyone in class. But Jia doesn't see the point in reminiscing and is wondering how Mincheol changed so much. She concludes that the city life changed him and he is now an assistant manager programmer at a well-known company and seems to live a decent life. Jia compares Mincheol to her life, where she constantly gets scolded at home and is unemployed, and is shocked that Mincheol is doing better than her. She starts to sulk again, but Mincheol interrupts her and asks how she is doing. Jia deflects the question and Mincheol says that he's just been living and while he thinks he's doing great, his parents think otherwise. His parents have been nagging him to get married and even signed up for a dating service with a registration fee of $5,000. Mincheol assumes Jia isn't in the same situation, but she is. Then, Jia suggests that they get married. Mincheol is shocked and Jia explains that since their parents are nagging them to get married, they should just get married to fix the problem. It would be a win-win scenario. To Jia's surprise, Mincheol asks Jia's dad for his blessing and they get married. They go to a tropical location for their honeymoon, and while she is drinking on the first night of her honeymoon, she finally realizes what just happened. She is shocked that she's not in a dream and is in another country married to Mincheol. Jia and Mincheol are now getting ready for bed and Mincheol is searching through his suitcase for something that would make their first night together good. Jia assumes that he is talking about something dirty and gets embarrassed, saying she is not ready. To her surprise, Mincheol hands her earplugs. He says that sometimes he snores and then goes to sleep. When Mincheol starts snoring, Jia uses the earplugs and goes to sleep, noting that Mincheol is very practical and prepared. The next day, Jia is concerned that her happy honeymoon can be disastrous if they start fighting. As Jia is carefully choosing her clothes, Mincheol appears in unfashionable but comfortable clothing and asks how much longer Jia is going to take. He is even wearing socks with sandals. Mincheol asks if it matters and Jia says it does because she will be looking. Since their schedule isn't tight, they go clothes shopping. While Jia doesn't know much about fashion, she thought anything else would be better. She was wrong. Mincheol comes out in a red and blue outfit with suspenders. His justification is that the colors are bright so he won't get hit by a car. Jia gives him a shirt and pants to try and she says they look nice to her. Mincheol proceeds to ask the clerk for 7 sets of the outfit. Jia is outraged but Mincheol says that since it looks good, he should have several of them. Jia decides to pick out a few new outfits so he can rotate between them. While she is looking, Mincheol notices the swimsuits. This prompts him to ask Jia if he can pick out a swimsuit for her for their banana boat ride. Gia agrees without thinking but is embarrassed when she realizes what he asked. Gia and Minchil finished shopping and are heading toward the shore. But Gia is still embarrassed that Minchil picked out her swimsuit. She is obligated to wear it at their next activity and doesn't even know what kind of swimsuit he bought. Gia thinks he bought a sexy one, but that was not the case. Minchil bought her a wetsuit to match his. To Minchil, this was the best choice because they are comfortable and insulated. But to Gia, his choice is embarrassing because this is their honeymoon and everyone else is in bikinis and swim shorts. She was concerned that it would be too hot. To her surprise, the wetsuit was very comfortable. The two had a wonderful time on the banana boat, eating and taking pictures. Toward the end of the day, Gia and Minchil were walking on the beach. Gia wants to do as much as possible because the trip was expensive. But Minchil is concerned that Gia is tired and points out an injury on her heel. Gia was too caught up in the fun to notice it. Minchil offers to give Gia a piggyback ride because walking on an injured heel must hurt. Gia is hesitant because of the schedule, but she eventually hops on Minchil's back. Gia is embarrassed and asks if she is heavy. Minchil points out how her weight makes it a good workout and Gia is offended by this. As they are going, Gia feels comfort from Minchil's back. Gia notices how beautiful the sunset is and insists they take a picture. Minchil doesn't want to, but Gia says that they should live in the moment. Back at the hotel, Gia is looking at the picture and remembers her sister saying that couples normally fight on their honeymoon. But Gia and Minchil didn't fight and they had a lot of fun. But Gia is still embarrassed about being on Minchil's broad warm back. This feeling quickly goes away as she sees Minchil sleeping. She is satisfied with the trip. Back in Korea, Gia's mom made a lot of food and packed boxes to celebrate her coming back and so she can move in with Minchil. Gia is apprehensive but remembers that she agreed to this when she got married. After the move, Minchil presents Gia with a paper. Gia remembers something random about a cartoon theme song. The lyrics were "Just do it, just do it. It's okay to make mistakes because you aren't an adult yet." Gia is just realizing now that this means that you're screwed if you make mistakes as an adult. The point is that since Gia said they should get married, her life has spiraled out of control and now she is living with Minchil. Back the paper. The paper is a contract for living together. Gia is shocked and throws it on the floor. She accepts that they need a contract and they each write 3 conditions. Minchil's rules are no smoking, don't bother Mouse, and say something if something is wrong. Gia's rules are don't enter a room without knocking, don't force anything, and communicate if something is wrong. Gia is outraged about the no smoking rule. Not even her dad could get her to stop. But Minchil doesn't like the smell, so he says to smoke in moderation. Gia asks who Mouse is. Mouse is Minchil's cat who is currently at Gia's feet. The cat is named Mouse because cats like mice. Gia eventually says she likes cats, but asks what would happen if she didn't. Minchil says that he would just get another room for Gia to live in. Money wouldn't be a problem because Minchil is serious about marriage. They agree on the rest of the terms and form an official contract. Minchil adds one more thing. Any party can terminate the contract marriage at any time. Gia foreshadows that the contract will bring them many tears and laughs. On the first night living together, Gia decides to not unpack yet and order some furniture. Minchil goes back to work tomorrow and Gia is anxious about living with someone other than her family. Minchil, on the other hand, is not worried and is gaming. The next day, Gia is woken to the sound of Minchil cooking breakfast. Gia is impressed and decides to eat since she's up. But this feeling quickly went away as Minchil put the ingredients into a blender to make a chicken breast smoothie. Gia thinks it tastes terrible and asks if they are having anything else. Minchil says yes and hands her a protein bar. Gia is mad and complains that this isn't real food and comments how Minchil is going to eat a delicious lunch at work by himself. Minchil disproves this by revealing his healthy lunch. Gia looks in the fridge for something to eat and it's filled with healthy food. Gia has a newfound gratitude toward her mom's cooking. Seeing Gia like this, Minchil suggests Gia go out and get breakfast by herself. Gia asks if that's okay and Minchil says that all he needs is his smoothie. Gia has been in the habit of eating with her family, but remembers this is a contract marriage. Minchil leaves and Gia says she's going to get a job soon and that she'll see him at dinner. The moment Minchil leaves, Gia takes back her words and proudly says she's going to stay unemployed until her bank is empty. Minchil is walking to work and gets into the car of his colleague, Sang Yu Choi. He is surprised that Minchil suddenly asked him to hand in his request to take 10 days of vacation. Sang Yu notices that Minchil is smiling, which he rarely does, and asks if something good happened. Minchil remembers Gia saying goodbye to him and he responds by saying it's nice knowing someone is waiting for you at home. Sang-yu is confused, but Mincheol clarifies that his wife is at home. Sang-yu is shocked. He thinks Mincheol is messing with him until Mincheol confirms he got married last week. When they get to work, everyone is congratulating Mincheol, and he hands them souvenirs from his honeymoon. But before Sang-yu can get to work, manager Suyeon-so pulls him aside and is angry that Mincheol got married, suggesting she liked him. Sang-yu responds by saying that it was unexpected because Mincheol didn't seem interested in girls. 33-year-old Suyeon's past is now summarized. She was seen as a child genius and just wanted a moderately okay guy. As she climbed to success, she remained single. She is annoyed that she can't find a decent guy. Then she realizes that this decent guy she wanted was Mincheol. But her dreams of marrying Mincheol are now shattered. All she can do now is consult with the Sang-yu who went to university with her and is the quote-unquote company Cupid. After work, Sang-yu and Suyeon follow Mincheol home to check if he's really married. Then, they see Mincheol talking to a girl on the street just to see an angry Jia smoking. Jia is angry because Mincheol didn't call her when he was coming home late because she waited for him to eat dinner. Sang-yu and Suyeon are skeptical that Jia is the type of girl Mincheol is interested in. Mincheol assumes Jia didn't want to eat with him because of what happened at breakfast, but Jia insists the problem is that he didn't call her. Mincheol asks if he is allowed to call her because Jia didn't like him calling her in 5th grade when he called to play. Jia said that she had to use the house phone, but is interrupted when he sees two people looking at them around the corner. Sang-yu and Suyeon hide and Mincheol confirms that he is allowed to call Jia. Mincheol had another chicken breast smoothie for dinner. Jia recalls her past with Mincheol and remembers that she stopped hanging out with him around 5th grade. They were close when they were younger, but stopped because she was teased for hanging around a boy. Jia continued to ignore Mincheol throughout middle school. Jia now feels bad about being angry at Mincheol. Before she can apologize, Mincheol sends Jia her favorite food, which is spicy chicken feet. Then, Jia barges into Mincheol's room. Instantly, Mincheol points out how she broke the rule, but Jia says that since there's a problem, they need to talk it out to fix it. Jia and Mincheol sit down to talk. Jia starts by complaining how Mincheol didn't get her beer to accompany her chicken feet. Jia gets to the point and says they haven't had a real conversation before, so she thought it would be good to talk and eat. Jia offers a beer to Mincheol, which he instantly rejects. Jia is concerned, but Mincheol just doesn't want to lose his gains. Instead of beer, Mincheol gets water and he asks what Jia wanted to talk about. Jia didn't have anything planned and is just going to make it up. 2 hours later, Jia is drunk and talking about Mincheol and her playing games in the past. Then, Jia fell asleep. Mincheol abruptly wakes her up with an alarm and tells her to go to her room and sleep and that he'll clean up. Jia notes that she is drunk because she drank the alcohol she bought for 2 people. In her drunken state, Jia asks Mincheol if she can see his ear. When Mincheol approaches, Jia takes his glasses and points out how his eyesight is bad. Mincheol wants them back and pushes Jia against the wall. She is having fun until she realizes that Mincheol is very attractive without his glasses, and they are very close together, so she gets embarrassed. Jia gives the glasses back and flees to her room. She is very embarrassed and doesn't know what to do. The next day, Jia stares at Mincheol as he leaves for work. She wants to apologize about last night, so things can go back to normal. When she attempts to say sorry, she gets nervous and says I meow because the cat said meow. Mincheol is confused. At work, Mincheol asks Sang-yu about Jia's meowing. Sang-yu thinks he is bragging, but Mincheol is genuinely confused. Sang-yu suggests that Jia was trying to be cute, but Mincheol says they aren't close enough to joke around together. Sang-yu, who supposedly has a doctorate in loviology, has a simple solution. He says that Mincheol needs sympathy. So, when he gets home, Mincheol meows at Jia. Jia falls to the floor in embarrassment. Mincheol states that Sang-yu said this would help, but Jia is mad that he told other people about it. To avoid situations like this, they added a clause in their contract to keep what happens between them a secret. A few days after, Suyeon suggests that Mincheol host a housewarming party. When Mincheol tells Jia this, she is initially hesitant, but she eventually agrees to do it. Mincheol asks why, but Jia insists. Housewarming parties are parties held after getting a new house or getting married. It is a party to ask for people's continued support in the future. It's not required, but it's something that only happens once or twice in your lifetime. You'd normally want to avoid it because it's a lot of work, but Jia wants to because Mincheol hates the idea. This is revenge for making her embarrassed yesterday. The next day, After protesting with Gia about how they don't need to have a party, he leaves for work with a smile. Gia has noticed a few key traits about Mincheol. Number 1. Mincheol is all about efficiency, almost like an eco-friendly robot. Number 2. Mincheol is weak to requests and will comply if you push enough. Based on these traits, Gia thinks Mincheol was going to tell the office that his wife didn't want to have a housewarming party. Gia gets embarrassed by what Mincheol refers to her at work. Gia starts preparations and starts to regret it. She doesn't know how to cook well and calls her mother for help. Soon, everyone arrives and Gia whispers to Mincheol that he should be nice to her. Everyone is amazed at the array of food Gia cooked. Mincheol clearly doesn't want to be there and even starts drinking. Sung-yu asks Soo-yeon if she is satisfied in knowing Mincheol is actually married, but she isn't and has something prepared to test them. Sung-yu starts by saying they'd like to use this time to get to know Mincheol better. Everyone wrote down something they wanted to know about him. The first request is Soo-yeon's. It is for them to kiss. Gia wants to hear the first request, but Sung-yu is apprehensive and skips to the next question. Gia says that to prevent a headache, they should just pretend to be a happy couple. The next question is when, where, and how did he propose? If they can't answer, they have to drink a whole glass of beer. Gia can't think of a good fake response, but Mincheol says that Gia proposed in a smoking area while he was eating chicken breast. While this is true, Gia decides to not say anything and drink. The next question is when and where was their first kiss? The problem is, they haven't kissed and even fake kissed at their wedding. Gia decides to drink, but to her surprise, Mincheol says they kissed at 5 years old in kindergarten. Gia doesn't remember, but Mincheol reminds her that her nickname in kindergarten was the smooching ghost because she went around kissing everyone. Gia is mad that Mincheol would bring this up. The party soon ended and everyone went home, but Sung-yu and Soo-yeon agree that their actions seem fake. When Sung-yu asks if they should look deeper, Soo-yeon says no. Sung-yu is shocked and almost gets into an accident. Soo-yeon says that it's okay because she didn't think she could force her way into their relationship. Sung-yu is surprised and decides they should go drink at a fancy barbecue place. Suddenly, they ended up waking up in the same bed together naked. Will this be the start of a romantic relationship? Back in Gia and Mincheol's apartment, Gia explains why talking about them kissing in kindergarten and proposing in a smoking area is embarrassing. Gia thinks this is common sense, but remembers that he's dealing with Mincheol. Gia says they should pick another time for their first kiss. Before they can decide, Gia gets a call from her mom. Her mom called to say Spaghetti Man Loses His Way came out today. Spaghetti Man is a work that started hero movies. Gia asks if her mom watched the movie as soon as it came out and says yes. Immediately after, Gia's mom tries to spoil the movie, but Gia ends the call before she gets the chance. Gia's family has a punishment system where if you don't watch a movie the day it comes out, someone who watches it will spoil it for everyone. The competition is fierce for big movies like Spaghetti Man, so Gia decides Mincheol and her need to watch it right now. Gia is enjoying herself with her popcorn, but Mincheol looks nervous. He says that this feels like a date. Gia is shocked. The movie was very good and they got embarrassed while trying to eat popcorn at the same time. Gia wonders what Mincheol thinks of the movie. Little does she know, Mincheol has been following the Spaghetti Man series for 20-some years. On their way out, Gia is talking about the movie with Mincheol and realizes that this feels like a date. Then, Gia gets pushed from behind and Mincheol catches her in his arms. Due to the sudden nature of the catch, they ended up accidentally kissing. Mincheol puts her down. Gia says that it didn't count because of the 3-second rule, and then runs away in embarrassment. Mincheol found Gia in the smoking area and made her air out her clothes. Mincheol then confirms the kiss didn't count because of the 3-second rule. They then decide to go to lunch and Gia can't get the image of the kiss out of her head. Gia feels like she's overreacting, but Mincheol says he needs to get something off his chest and reveals the kiss was actually 5 seconds. Mincheol suggests they make this first kiss, but Gia is mad and runs away because she couldn't look at Mincheol. Gia decided to move in with her sister. Jaemin and Jinwoo are not impressed. Then, the 13,261st Gia summit started. This included Gia from 6 different ages. She explains the situation and thinks that what Mincheol said was rude. Gia didn't want to go back to her parents' place, so she is at Jimin's place now. 15-year-old Gia asks if she can stay at a friend's place, but that is not possible. Gia's plan works because Jaemin owes her for bringing them together, giving them money for dates, and convincing them to get married. However, Jaemin is not happy. Despite the gift, Gia and Jaemin start talking. They note how Jimin's children take after Jia, and when she tries to spoil the Spaghetti Man movie, Jia reveals she already watched it. Jimin asks what happened with Mincheol and guesses that Jia ran away after fighting with Mincheol. Jia confirms this. Jimin then agrees to let Jia stay there to babysit the kids so they can go out. Jia isn't happy about this, but she doesn't have a choice. After 2 hours, Jia realizes how hard it is to be a parent. The doorbell rings and thinking that it's a delivery, she opens the door to find Mincheol standing there. Jia slams the door shut and is wondering what he is doing there. One of the children says that if someone who looks like Mincheol comes, he should be let in because he has food. Jia has been set up. While the kids are eating ice cream, Jia and Mincheol get to talking. Mincheol reveals that Jimin told him that she was here. Jia protests, but Mincheol reminds her how the contract said they need to talk it out. Mincheol asks why she is mad. After pondering the question while feeding the kids ice cream, which Mincheol refuses to eat, she remembers it's not a big deal since they're both adults. After Jimin and Jinu got back, they left together for the apartment. On their way back, Mincheol apologizes and says he should have thought about it and said sorry earlier. Jia says that Mincheol is only saying that because that is what Jia wants to hear. She continues by saying Mincheol should be punished with a forehead flick. Mincheol doesn't want one due to past forehead flicking trauma. Before the flick, Jia says she's mad because she doesn't want her first kiss to be an accident. Jia decides to kiss Mincheol on the forehead and says that this is their first kiss. At work, Mincheol is discussing with Sungyu how Jia is mad that people think their first kiss was in kindergarten. Mincheol is worried about how to correct this. But Sungyu shouts that this isn't anything to worry about and explains how he has been very tired ever since the party. Mincheol says that they all left laughing and smiling so he shouldn't be tired. Sungyu avoids the topic and Suyeon appears. Sungyu and Suyeon are so embarrassed they can't even look at each other. Suyeon flees when Mincheol waves. Sungyu introduces himself again. He is very talkative and claims to have a doctorate in loviology, but it's all a lie. He is really an introvert who likes staying at home. But, since he has 3 sisters, he hears a lot of conversations. This made him an expert in reading clues from women. This skill was exhibited at a young age. He quickly became the god of dating because he matches so many together, but he never had a girlfriend before. After his entanglement in the sheets with Suyeon, he was lost because Suyeon apologized after. Sungyu first met Suyeon in college, where he was a freshman and she was a senior. Suyeon was very demanding, but now she is just another adult. So, they decided to forget what happened that night. Now, Sungyu and Suyeon are now awkward every time they meet, indicating they aren't actually adults yet. Suddenly, in the elevator, Sungyu breaks the silence by calling out to Suyeon. But Sungyu could not get himself to talk about anything and was interrupted by a delivery man. As the day passed, Sungyu was still caught up thinking about Suyeon. Mincheol notices this and asks him what's wrong while handing him a red ginseng stick. Sungyu says nothing's wrong, but then comes to a profound realization. Mincheol is married and could help solve his problem. Sangyu asks for advice on how to break the awkwardness after a fight. Mincheol recalls how he isn't supposed to talk about the marriage, but also remembers how he can be flexible at times. Mincheol decides to be flexible and says that their last fight was resolved by Jia kissing him. This is not what Sungyu wanted to hear. After work, Sungyu is walking and is mad how he gives good advice, but no one can give him advice. He decides to call his second oldest sister, Yenju, for help. She is a popular romance novelist and influencer. Sungyu explains his problem, stating that this is actually his friend's problem, not his. She understands the problem, but wants something in return. Sungyu offers to get her 2 boxes of her favorite macarons, and she agrees. But, before Yenju starts, she asks if the friend Sungyu is asking for his name Sungyu Choi. After realizing he was caught, Sungyu hung up the phone. But, not all hope is lost as he runs into Jia. The conversation is awkward as they make small talk, and shortly ends as Jia says she needs to go and runs away. Sungyu feels like he recognizes Jia from somewhere. He asks Jia if she is flaming hot chicken feet. Jia is shocked and stops running. Initially, Jia acts like she doesn't know who that is. Sungyu continues by saying that he is Yenju's little brother. Listed off romance novels she's written, such as Is It Hot Because It's Summer and Why Would I Be a No for Miss No, and even said he got her autograph. Jia's pen name is Flaming Hot Chicken Feet. In college, Jia chose a major to get a job rather than chasing her dreams. She barely got into university and didn't enjoy the social life. With nothing to do, she spent her time reading novels at her friend's place. Her friend was Yenju Choi. She was shy and quiet, but what made her special is that she wrote novels. Gia saw her works and decided that writing looked like fun. She was bored and decided to give it a try. 3 months later, Gia won an award and officially became a writer. But Yenju appears jealous. She debuted soon after. Gia didn't expect to win, so she chose a silly pen name. Gia went with Sungyu to talk at a cafe because she didn't have a choice. Sungyu gives Gia the situation. Gia starts by asking if Sungyu needs someone to listen to him or someone who gives him a push. Sungyu is shocked. Gia continues by saying that Sungyu is clearly interested in the girl. After hearing Gia's advice, Sungyu leaves and comments how writers have no empathy, but it was still useful. Sungyu calls Suyeon. Suyeon is shocked and picks up. Sungyu says that he just wanted to hear her voice. Apparently, that wasn't enough, and he asks Suyeon if he can come to her right now. Suyeon is concerned because it's late, but Sungyu reveals he's outside her house. He says it will only take a minute. Suyeon doesn't want to because she is flustered, already took off her makeup and ready for bed. But she agrees and says she'll need 30 minutes to get ready. Suyeon appears dressed in an intricate outfit. They go sit on the swings to talk. Sungyu says he wanted to see her to give her some macarons. Suyeon is impressed because the place always has a long line, and they are delicious. This isn't the real reason Sungyu called her out. Suyeon starts to leave because she thinks that's all Sungyu had to say, but Sungyu stops her. He insists that they should stay on the swings because it is fun. Sungyu musters up some courage and says they need to talk about that day. Suyeon says they agreed to forget about it, but Sungyu says he can't despite his best effort. Sungyu says this is because this is his first time doing stuff like that. Suyeon denies this because he is a relationship expert, but it is true. Sungyu ends by saying that if she wants him to forget it, she will have to tell him how to forget it. But Suyeon doesn't know how to do that and says she doesn't want to forget either. The scene abruptly jumps to Mincheol's house. Gia is eating macarons and Mincheol asks if you gained weight. Gia is shocked and almost chokes. Gia denies it, but Mincheol was actually talking to Mouse. Mouse feels heavier than usual. Gia says that maybe it's because of the cold weather and Mouse is getting ready for hibernation. Mincheol agrees and decides to turn up the thermostat. The next morning, Gia tells Mincheol to have a great day at work and Mincheol surprisingly says see you tonight. Gia is concerned that perhaps Mincheol has caught on to Gia feeding Mouse snacks. Mincheol has an automatic pet feeder that dispenses 3.3 ounces of food per day. Gia saw a mouse crying for snacks because the feeder only gave a set amount, and she gave in. This is why Mouse gained weight. Gia thinks Mouse didn't gain a lot of weight because she would play with Mouse after the snack. But upon picking Mouse up, Mouse is heavier. But Mouse is not the only person who gained weight. Gia had been ordering delivery often to the apartment. Gia decides to step on a scale that she always ignored. The number is a lot higher than expected. The scale must be broken because her clothes still fit. But when she bent down, she heard a ripping noise and knew something needed to change. That evening, Gia asks Mincheol to teach her to work out. Mincheol is very happy and excitedly asks when they can start. Mincheol is very dedicated and workouts every day after work. When Gia tries, she is incapacitated after a few sets and she still has to do legs. Gia is transported to the beach. She says that an asteroid is going to hit Earth and this is their last night. She asks what they could do to make the last night meaningful. Mincheol says the answer is obvious. They will work on legs. Gia wakes up from her dream and is unable to move from being sore. Mincheol was excited that Gia wanted to work out, but is concerned at how much she is struggling. Back at the gym, Gia is doing lunges while Mincheol is cheering her on. At home, Mincheol prepares vegetables for Gia to eat and suggests she take a walk. Gia thinks that she should have lost for 6 pounds by now, but the scale did not change. Back at the gym, Mincheol says if Gia does a routine for 3 minutes per day, she will improve. The first is a 60-second plank. This is hard and Gia needed to do 3 sets. After the sets, Gia thought she had died. Gia looks at Mincheol and is surprised how much he can bench. He was benching 350 pounds for reps. Then, a girl approaches Mincheol and asks if he's a personal trainer. Mincheol is confused, but the girl continues by asking if he could teach her how to use the machines. Mincheol agrees and Gia is shocked. Mincheol shows her how to use the machines and how to do squats, but she is touching Mincheol a lot. This upsets Gia. The girl falls in a cute manner and says it's her first time, but Gia knows it's not. Then the girl says Mincheol is totally her type and asks if he wants to go for coffee after. Gia is shocked, and while she isn't supposed to get involved with his life, she shouts out to Mincheol. Mincheol declines the girl's offer by saying that he is married and announces that Gia is his wife. The entire gym and the girl are shocked. The girl flees from embarrassment. Mincheol and Gia leave the gym, but Gia is also embarrassed. Gia asks if this type of thing happens often, and Mincheol confirms. But Mincheol always declines because he doesn't want to go to a cafe or bar after a workout because there's nothing to eat. But he would go if they had protein shakes. Every time, the girl stops coming to the gym 3 days later. Gia is put at ease because she knows nothing will happen. Gia is grateful that Mincheol is helping her, but she wants to quit because it's hard. On their way back, Gia notices that Mincheol is smiling. He says it's because he gets to work out with Gia. This makes it hard for Gia to quit. The next morning, Gia goes for a light jog to relieve muscle aches. At the track, a hooded man asks if she is Gia, and Gia is shocked to see this man. Gia tries to run away, but since they are both out of shape and the man has asthma, they stop. The man gives Gia his business card. His name is Yangduek Na and a former main producer. His business card has a ruler, but it is wrong. He printed it wrong on purpose for marketing. Since Gia asked about it, the marketing worked. Yangduek asks if Gia is still writing. Gia says that's insulting, and he apologizes for what happened. He gets a call for a meeting and says they should get dinner sometime. As he leaves, Gia crumbles up the card and starts jogging again. Gia returns home, and Mincheol is concerned why they are eating a candlelit dinner with fancy clothing and cutlery. Gia wanted to mix things up because they eat the same thing every day. Mincheol is uncomfortable and Gia feels bad about it. After dinner, she is in her room and anxious about how she keeps running into people from her past. Then, Mincheol knocks on her door wearing a suit and asks for a dance. Gia tries to close the door, but Mincheol blocks it. Gia concedes, and they sit on the sofa. Mincheol says that Gia was acting weird, so he wanted to cheer her up with a dance. Gia is confused, but Mincheol says that this is what they do in the movies. Gia thinks this is romantic. Gia asks what type of movies Mincheol is referring to, and he says Bollywood movies. In those films, they dance all the time, including when they are sad and during gunfights. Mincheol continues by saying that when you do something alone, it is weird, but when you do it together, it is fun. So, they might as well make the weird setting fun. Gia bursts into laughter and confirms that she said that. Gia then suggests that she has something better than dancing. They go to a barbecue spot and have pork belly and soju. Mincheol comments how they could have gone to somewhere nice with candles since they dressed up, but Gia says there is fire right in front of them. Gia says getting dressed up and going to a fancy restaurant is normal, but going dressed up to a barbecue place is weirder and more fun. Just thought of something fun. She picks up greens and tells Mincheol to say ah. Mincheol protests, but Gia says to play along. Mincheol realizes that Gia put peppers in the greens and has a funny reaction. They then go to karaoke. Gia is having fun. She never thought that doing something that is seen as weird would be exciting, but she had too much fun and got embarrassed. Mincheol, on the other hand, doesn't get embarrassed and just enjoys it. Gia then thanks Mincheol for hanging out with her, and Mincheol is confused. Gia says that she'll repay him for the night and says they should go home. But before they leave, Mincheol grabs her hand and asks why Gia always has the last word and that he has something to say. He puts his hands on her chin as if he's preparing to kiss her. Gia remembers when she was 10 years old and watching a drama series. This is where she discovered that kissing is embarrassing. Gia asks her mom why they are kissing when it is embarrassing, but her mom says it's fine. Her mom later explained that those types of moments happen out the blue and Gia didn't understand. But now, she does. Gia puckers her lips and is ready to kiss. But Mincheol has other plans. He picks a loose thread that was on her neck that was bothering him. Gia is mad. She grabs Mincheol by the tie and kisses him. Mincheol is confused, but Gia said it was complimentary. She continues by saying she did it because she wanted to. In the bathroom, Gia is embarrassed that she kissed Mincheol in a public place. Her excuse was nonsense. Mincheol is also in the bathroom washing his face. She does not know why she kissed Mincheol. After recalling key moments from her marriage, she laughs and has a realization. While they were kissing, several small Gia-like figures stop them and demand they kiss better. For a real kiss, you have to stick your tongue in their mouth and move it around. Gia confirms that she did this. Then, the small Gias tell them to kiss again, and they do. But this was all a dream, and Gia woke up. Jia is surprised she had a dream about kissing Mincheol. She walks to the bathroom and upon opening the door, Mincheol is there. He just finished his shower and looks incredibly hot. Jia is embarrassed. Mincheol asks if Jia is in a bad mood, but she says she had a bad dream. She remembers them eating yesterday, and she slams her head on the table in embarrassment. Jia covers this up when Mincheol asks by saying there was a mosquito on the table. Jia believes that she is a victim of the suspension bridge effect, which means feelings of excitement towards someone increases during a time of anxiety. Every day is a time of anxiety because she is worried they might get caught and because she is working out. She concludes that this is a misinterpretation of feelings. Mincheol kneels down to Jia's level and asks if she is sick. Jia gets embarrassed because he is too close. She says she's fine, so Mincheol is relieved. But he wants to talk about last night. Before he gets the chance, Jia leaves. Mincheol is now at work and Sungyu notices Mincheol's mismatching socks and suggests that he had a hectic morning. Mincheol even threw out the full instant coffee packet instead of the end. While drinking, he remembers his kiss with Jia and doesn't know what to do. Mincheol and Jia are now at the gym to work out, but their interactions are awkward. It was just an accident, but Jia is still bothered by it. Jia thinks that Mincheol isn't bothered by it either because he doesn't have a visible reaction. After stretching, Mincheol says they will do the bench press. Jia is concerned because she saw a video of someone getting crushed by the weight and that she shouldn't do it. Mincheol says that while it could happen, he has a lot of experience, so she'll probably be fine. Jia lies down and is scared of the bar. She says if she gets crushed, she is going to write Mincheol's name in her will even though she will be dead. Mincheol added to 20 pounds plates and Jia is ready to go. Jia is concerned, but Mincheol says it's fine because it's only 60 pounds total. Mincheol lifts up the bar and tells Jia to give it a try. Jia is embarrassed and grabs the bar. While she is lowering the bar with Mincheol's help, Jia is worried because it feels like her heart is going to pound out of her chest. Jia is concerned that Mincheol is too close to her, so she starts doing reps on her own. After the bench, Jia thinks that they ended their relationship the way it is. Since she is sweating, she takes off her tracksuit, but Mincheol puts it back on her. Jia is confused, but Mincheol says that she might get a cold. Jia confirms by saying that she doesn't want a cold, but she continues by asking if what Mincheol just said was nonsense. She can't stop a cold with her thin jacket. If she could, everyone else in the gym would be frozen. Jia notices Mincheol looking away and asks if Mincheol is bothered by Jia's clothing being too thin. Mincheol responds by taking his shirt off. Jia tries to stop him and Mincheol asks if taking his shirt off bothers her. Jia avoids the question, but Mincheol continues by saying that it bothers him when Jia does it and aligns her jacket. On their way back, Mincheol was silent. Jia remembers that Mincheol has always been this way. When Jia hurt her leg when they were kids, Mincheol insisted on carrying her home even though he was shorter than her. It took them 2 hours to go home when it was normally a 20-minute walk, but Mincheol was happy about it. Back to the present, Mincheol says Jia did a good job and to keep it up tomorrow. Jia seems happy and grabs Mincheol's hand. Mincheol is confused. Jia says that he has a problem. He can let go. Jia then ponders that if they had a different start, how would it end up? The scene shifts to Yenju and Yengduek having dinner. He mentions that he recently saw Jia. Yenju asks who that is, but when Yenduek describes what she was doing and who she is, Yenju avoids the topic and says they should eat before their steak gets cold. Yenduek believes that she hadn't gotten over what happened. The scene shifts back to Sungyu and Suyin on the swings. Before Suyin could say anything meaningful, she gets embarrassed and says they should talk another time. Sungyu is mad and asks if he's too much for her. Suyin knows, but she's scared of changing their relationship because Sungyu is the only person she can really talk to. But Sungyu isn't happy and points out that Suyin crossed the line first and initiated. Then, Sungyu declared that he likes Suyin. Suyin agrees to go out with Sungyu. Sungyu and Suyin are now dating, and their car ride with Mincheol is awkward. At the office, Sungyu is focused on his work and doesn't even eat lunch with Suyin. They say goodbye after work and exchange texts. This cycle repeats until Sungyu realizes this is no different than before. Suyin has the same idea that they need something to break the pattern. Suyin texts first and asks if he has a sec, but she misspells it, which confuses Sungyu. Suyin quickly corrects it, but once again clicks X instead of C. Suyin is very embarrassed and Sungyu calls her. Suyin picks up and Sungyu asks if Suyin meant to say if he had a second to talk and that he does have time to talk. Sung-Yu's consideration had a huge effect on Soo-Yeon, and she is silent. This silence makes Sung-Yu think he messed up, but Soo-Yeon then confirms that she meant to say that. They make small talk, but Soo-Yeon doesn't have the courage to say anything, so she yawns. Sung-Yu compliments her voice, and before Soo-Yeon can hang up, Sung-Yu suggests they go on a date. Soo-Yeon is confused, but agrees. Sung-Yu suggests that they go now despite it being 11:38 p.m. because he wants to see her right now. But Soo-Yeon angrily says that it's rude to show up out of nowhere when she isn't ready. They decide on a later day for the date. On the day of the date, they meet up, but Soo-Yeon is wearing a trench coat with a hat, mask and sunglasses, so no one recognizes her. They decide to go into the movies and question the odds that they run into something they know. Then they run into Jia. They exchange awkward greetings until Jia notices Soo-Yeon. She remembers Sung-Yu asking for advice and now knows he was successful. Jia congratulates Sung-Yu, but Soo-Yeon is concerned about what to do. Jia makes fun of them going on a date during the day and they leave. On their way out, Soo-Yeon says that she notices Sung-Yu and Jia were surprisingly close. Sung-Yu then hugs Soo-Yeon. Mincheol then appears holding a spaghetti man branded tomato sauce that is limited to one per customer. Sung-Yu hugged Soo-Yeon so Mincheol didn't notice them. When Mincheol leaves, they separate and get embarrassed. They express how hot it is, which is from their embarrassment, and decide to get cold noodles for lunch. At the trending cold noodle place, more people from the office were there, so they had an awkward lunch. At karaoke, someone from work was there. Even the once famous cafe is closed. After getting ice cream, Sung-Yu complains how they keep running into people at work. Then, he notices that Soo-Yeon has ice cream on her cheek and decides to clean it up with his finger and lick it. Soo-Yeon and Sung-Yu are embarrassed, but Sung-Yu is still happy about the day. As the day comes to an end, they don't want to say goodbye, but they've done everything they planned and can't think of anything else. Sung-Yu suggests they need to get going, and Soo-Yeon agrees. Suddenly, they appear in front of a motel, and Sung-Yu is in awe of its size. Sung-Yu cannot think straight and grabs Soo-Yeon's hand and pulls her into the building. To her surprise, they are in an arcade, not the motel. But Sung-Yu thinks Soo-Yeon is disappointed they didn't go into the motel when in reality, she is embarrassed that her mind is in the gutter. Sung-Yu does not know what to do. He grabs Soo-Yeon and says that he remembers she wanted this fox plush. Soo-Yeon denies it, but Sung-Yu insists she spent $50 trying to get it. Sung-Yu declares that he will get the fox. This is his chance to make it up to her. He is determined to get the fox. After spending $120, the owner gave them a similar-looking fox. Sung-Yu thinks he's screwed. They couldn't do any of the activities in peace, and it was the worst date imaginable. They arrive at Soo-Yeon's house and Sung-Yu apologizes for the awful first date. But Soo-Yeon had fun today. The cold noodles were delicious. Trying to get the fox was fun, and trying to avoid people was exciting. Sung-Yu is embarrassed and insists that he will get her a bigger fox on their next date. They part ways and Sung-Yu goes home to his parents and declares he loves them. Soo-Yeon puts the fox next to a bunny plush Sung-Yu got her in the past and is happy. Back at Mincheol's house, they are watching Spaghetti Man on the sofa and Jia is sleeping on Mincheol's lap. Back earlier in the day, Jia had gotten a call from her family and was about to get the Galaxy Wars movie spoiled. So, Jia and Mincheol go watch the movie. Jia is on a diet, so she gets Diet Coke with popcorn. But the movie was boring and Jia is in agony because she suggested they watch it. Jaemin knew how bad it was and suggested it anyway. Back at the house, Jia decides that she's going to watch a real movie. Jia says that Mincheol can do anything he wants, but he sits on the sofa and watches with her. Mincheol is eating carrots and cucumbers during the movie, and Jia thinks this is weird, but she ended up mindlessly eating them during the movie. They ended up watching 3 movies, which brings us back to the present. Jia fell asleep on Mincheol's lap and was embarrassed. Jia quickly moves away and asks how long she was like that. Mincheol says about 1 hour. Jia is worried that something happened while she was asleep. So, she asked Mincheol if something happened and he starts talking about things that happened in the movie, not real life. Jia notices that the only time Mincheol has shown emotion is when she asked him to work out. She realizes that she is just dragging Mincheol into things. Jia decides to lay down and poke Mincheol with her feet, stating that she has long legs. Mincheol is confused, asking if she has a reason. She does not. Mincheol decides to massage Jia's feet. He does not have a reason for this either, but Jia is shocked. Jia says it tickles, but Mincheol continues because he is concerned about her muscles being tight. Jia is having a good time and remembers that Mincheol has always been good at stuff like back rubs. This is until Mincheol pressed her foot too hard, causing Gia to shoot up and her face to be right next to Minchell's. Gia gets embarrassed and it seems they are about to kiss. But Gia's foot starts to cramp and Minchell starts to meow in response. Gia is confused but he insists that this is to scare away the cramp. Gia is now washing her face and realizes that she is always the one embarrassed. But that is not important because they almost kissed during the massage, which is a problem. Everything was there and it was going to happen if Gia didn't cramp. Gia remembers that Minchell didn't look like he was against the idea. She wants Minchell to make the first move for once, but then she realizes that he is generally clueless. Then, Gia tastes something bitter and thinks it's cucumber. But Gia didn't eat cucumber during the movie because she doesn't like it. There is only one possibility. Minchell must have kissed when she was asleep on his lap. Before Minchell leaves for work the next day, Gia asks if nothing truly happened. Minchell says nothing happened and when Gia pressed about it, Minchell got embarrassed and left. Gia now knows something happened and planned to mess with Minchell for the next few days. But Minchell started to avoid Gia at all costs. Gia respects Minchell's privacy, but it's almost as if he is avoiding all conversation with Gia. After a few days of this, Minchell even texted her that he is not going to the gym. Gia is shocked and decides to start typing a long message. But then Minchell calls her and she leaves for a bar. When he arrives, Minchell is sleeping on the table and Sungyu is crying. From the table, Gia thinks they are both extremely drunk. Gia realizes that since Minchell is red from drinking too much, Sungyu is the source of the problem. When Gia confronts Sungyu, he says that Minchell is the one who wanted to drink. Sungyu mentioned that Minchell seemed off for the last few days and was making mistakes. He asked if Gia and Minchell had a fight. In the taxi ride home, Gia ponders this question and Minchell drunkenly asks if Gia is there while leaning on her. During this, Minchell tries to kiss Gia. When Gia says no, Minchell recalls that Gia said it's up to the person that gives a kiss. Gia denies this. Gia actually said it's complimentary service, but it's the same thing despite Gia trying to deny it. The driver asks if they are newlyweds. Gia gets embarrassed and realizes that they are acting like a newlywed couple. Then, the driver comments how Gia's husband must love her, and Gia remembers that Minchell is actually her husband. When Gia says Minchell is a thorn in her side, the driver asks if they got in a fight. Gia decides they should go somewhere other than Minchell's apartment. Minchell soon wakes up, and he and Gia are in a Ferris wheel. Gia had gotten all-access passes to an amusement park. Since barely anyone else is on the Ferris wheel, they can use the pass to keep going around the Ferris wheel. Minchell tries to get off, but Gia stops him. Gia then asks Minchell if he remembers passing out at the bar. She believes he was drinking because of her and the contract says that they need to talk it out. Gia wanted to talk about it, but Minchell kept avoiding her. Because of all the trouble she's been through, Minchell owes it to her to stay on the Ferris wheel. A Gia Han-sponsored event occurs, and they begin their first round of truth or dare. Minchell is confused. Gia explains that you need to answer the question truthfully, or you get punished, which is a forehead flick. If he lies, the game ends. Minchell doesn't want a forehead flick, and this makes Gia remember kissing his forehead. Minchell still doesn't want to since truth or dare makes a fool of the person. Gia says that this won't happen because she won't lie due to her having an unpleasant memory relating to Yenju. Gia provokes Minchell by saying that this is his chance to ask her anything and even flick her. Minchell agrees and asks who goes first. They play rock paper scissors for it and Gia wins. Gia's question is if Minchell likes her. Minchell gets embarrassed and doesn't answer. The countdown is up and Gia flicks his forehead. It is Minchell's turn and he asks if she likes him. Gia says that she doesn't not like him and gets embarrassed. Minchell is confused and tries to ask another question, but Gia stops him. Gia starts her next question. She says she could taste cucumbers after the movie even though she doesn't eat cucumbers. Also, Minchell started avoiding her after that night. Gia asks if Minchell did something while she was sleeping. Minchell is speechless. Gia continues by asking if Minchell kissed her that night. Gia says that there's no point in avoiding it because they're going to stay there until she gets the answer. Minchell says that he didn't kiss her. Gia ends the game and declares Minchell is lying. Minchell says that he did kiss her that night, just not on the lips. He kissed her forehead. The reason she tasted cucumbers is because he put his finger on her lips. Minchell says that he was looking at her face while she was sleeping and it just happened. Gia is confused why they had all this trouble because Minchell kissed her once. Minchell apologizes, but Gia feels disappointed, suggesting that she wanted something more. Minchell apologizes again. Jia says he doesn't have to, but he is apologizing for what he is about to do. Fireworks go off and Mincheol kisses Jia on the lips. Jia is shocked that Mincheol is the one initiating. The kiss was bitter because Mincheol was eating cucumbers at the bar. Jia pulls away because of the taste, and before she can ask a question, Mincheol passes out. Jia is struggling to take Mincheol out of the Ferris wheel. Jia and Mincheol refer to this night as the first great drinking apocalypse. Because of this, they added no kissing after eating cucumbers to their contract. As Mincheol leaves for work, he says that he thought she would be more mad. Mincheol says that since he can't kiss after eating cucumbers, then he can when he hasn't. Jia demands Mincheol to leave for work. At work, Mincheol apologizes to Sungyu about last night. While Jia is vacuuming, she gets a notification on her phone. Her stock portfolio had gone down significantly. Jia is devastated. Jia is not a freelancer who's not working. She is a freelancer who doesn't need to work. The royalties and dividends from stocks she owns is enough to pay the bills. She is quite loaded. Well, she was loaded. Jia thinks her stock app is broken. Why else would the value be falling so much? She lost 9.28%. Jia decides to wait it out because selling is for noobs. Her stocks went down before, so it's fine. For days later, she has lost 18.18% and Mincheol is concerned by her behavior. There is news that a businessman is getting a divorce, so Jia sells her stocks. The next morning, the stock is up 12.3%. Jia is very angry and starts cussing the businessman out. Jia decides to go out and eat. Jia realizes that if she buys stocks when they're down, she's basically getting a discount. Jia continues to sell her stocks low and buys high. Jia is now at the gym and her stocks are worth less than her original investment. Mincheol asks if Jia is going to work out and she says yes. Mincheol also asks if Jia has been playing a game on her phone since she's always looking at it. Jia decides to lie to not worry Mincheol and says she has been watching a show. After their workout, Jia's investment goes even lower and she deletes the app because she can't stand to look at it. Later that day, there was a scandal with the businessman which caused the stock to plummet further. She should have sold her stocks. But if she never sells, she never actually lost any money. This is perfect logic for Jia. Then, Mincheol appears and asks Jia a question. He looks very concerned and asks if Jia likes someone else. Jia is shocked. She denies it and Mincheol said that saw a video about married couples. It said that if your spouse starts acting differently, they might have someone else. Jia is still confused, until she realizes she checked off all the boxes for suspicious behavior. Mincheol pointed out that she also lied at the gym when she said she was watching a show. Mincheol says that Jia has a tendency to share interesting and funny things with others, but Jia didn't share the name of the show with Mincheol. Jia thinks Mincheol took it the wrong way, so she tells him the truth. Mincheol is shocked that Jia lost that much. But Jia just didn't want Mincheol to worry. Mincheol is concerned and asks if it's really okay that she lost all her savings and what is going to do about living expenses. Jia says that she will just work for money, but it is not actually fine. But what is worse than losing her money is the impression this left on Mincheol. Mincheol suggests that he could pick up more of the bills, but Jia stops him. Jia says that they should take care of their own issues when it comes to money, which is why she didn't tell him at first. This is a matter of pride for Jia. When she moved out, she promised herself that she would handle her own life. She is proud she hasn't had to borrow money from anyone. Mincheol stands up and says that he trusts Jia while touching her ears. Jia is embarrassed and smacks Mincheol on the forehead. Mincheol was simply giving Jia his energy by touching her ears. Mincheol says they used to do this in the past, and they would yell energy infusion when doing it. Jia smacks Mincheol again and leaves. She is angry that he would bring something from the past up, and once she leaves, she realizes touching someone's ears is a very sensual thing. 1 week later, Jia is going to job interviews, and Mincheol says good luck before she leaves. Jia has been too lucky throughout her life, but her struggle to get a job starts now. However, Jia is crossing the road when suddenly, truck appears. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video. Two birds are reading a piece of paper. It says that a long time ago, in a small village, there was an honest lumberjack and an angel who could not return to heaven because she lost her winged robe. Life was going good until one day, the lumberjack hears the angel calling for him while he is cutting down a tree. The angel found her robe while cleaning the house. The angel is excited, but the lumberjack is horrified. The angel continues by saying that the robe was hidden right under their noses because it was at the back of the closet. She rhetorically asks who could have possibly put it there. The lumberjack puts his head down in shame, for he is the one who hid the robe. He did it because angels can't fly back to heaven without it, so they are forced to live in the human world. The lumberjack thought he was clever by stealing it while the angel was taking a bath. But the angel knew the lumberjack's scheme from the very beginning. She could have taken the robe out of the closet the moment it was put there, but she didn't. Because the angel knows, she starts to tease the lumberjack. The angel playfully suggests that the lumberjack hid the robe so she would be forced to live with the lumberjack. But simple teasing is too much for the lumberjack to handle, and he admits to it. The lumberjack profusely apologizes and justifies it by saying it was all in the name of love. The angel is shocked that the lumberjack admitted it without any protest. But instead of leaving, she has other plans. If he does her one favor, he will be forgiven. The favor is whenever they are together, the lumberjack can't wear his glasses. The lumberjack is shocked because he can't see without them. Then, the angel accidentally drops his glasses into the water, meaning that the lumberjack can't use them anymore. She continues by calling the lumberjack clueless. The angel has been dropping hints that she doesn't like his glasses, and he just hasn't picked up on it. The robe is irrelevant to the situation since she doesn't plan on going back to heaven anyway. As long as he gets rid of his glasses, she will stay with him. Then, the angel puts her hands on the lumberjack's cheeks and starts to slowly lean toward him, almost as if they are going to kiss. Before their lips touch, the great mountain spirit suddenly comes out of the water with 2 pairs of glasses and asks which one belongs to the lumberjack. Suddenly, Gia screams neither of them and wakes up in a hospital bed. She did not become an isekai protagonist. She is flustered that it was all a dream and is confused why she had such a strange dream. The story of the lumberjack and the angel ends with them starting a business of selling sticky rice cakes to tigers. Gia calls her mother to inform her of the accident. She is horrified, but Gia reveals that it wasn't really an accident. Truck-kun stopped right in front of her and barely grazed her. She is unhurt, but she did faint, which could be attributed to being tired since she is job hunting. The doctor told Gia to inform her guardian of the accident, but her mother points out that Minchiel is her guardian and asks what he said about it. Gia is shocked. She thought her guardian was still her mom. Upon looking up the definition of guardian, Gia discovers that Minchiel is her guardian now. Suddenly, Minchiel appears next to Gia covered in sweat and asks if she is okay. Gia is confused why he is here, but Minchiel says that her mother called him. Then, Minchiel notices a man talking to the doctor in the distance and approaches him. Minchiel towers over the man and menacingly asks if he is the one who hurt his wife. Gia is shocked. She never knew Minchiel could make a face like that. Upon seeing Minchiel, the man bows down and apologizes for what he's done. The doctor tells Minchiel to calm down so they can discuss his family members' symptoms. When Gia hears, she remembers that Minchiel and her are now family. This means that Minchiel is there whenever she needs him. Minchiel confirms Gia is okay, but instead of leaving, he continues to ask if Gia is okay and wants to stay with her. Eventually, Minchiel leaves to go back to work, but she wishes that Minchiel would have stayed with her longer. Gia is now walking in the hospital and needs to focus on getting a job. Suddenly, she runs into Yenduek. Gia explains that she fainted because she almost got hit by a truck-kun, and Yenduek asks where Gia is going while walking toward his sports car. Whenever Gia sees a sports car, she knows how much it costs and doesn't dare to walk near it. She always wondered what type of people drive those types of cars. Now she knows. As they are going, Gia's hair is in her face, and Yenduek is coughing. He says that perhaps he should have used one of his other cars, and Gia is shocked that he has another car. Yenduek reveals that he has several cars, but they are all rentals. Gia thought he had won the lottery because how else could he afford them? But Yenduek says that he already won the lottery. Gia is intrigued, but then Yenduek reveals that he hit the jackpot when he ran into Gia. Gia is angry that he keeps using cheap pickup lines. Yenduek gets serious and asks why Gia is dressed in a suit. Gia says that she was on her way to an interview because she needs money, and Yenduek is speechless. Yenduek points out that Gia got a lot of money from her days as an author and asks if she already used it all up. Not wanting to reveal what actually happened, Gia just says that a lot of things happened recently and there isn't much left. Yenduek is laughing that the Gia Han is willing to work a job to pay the bills. Before he can continue, Gia flips him off and tells him that she isn't going to write again. Yenduek points out that Gia saying that before he said anything shows that she has the writer's spirit in her. Then, Yenduek suggests that Jia work at a cafe. Jia is confused, but Yenduek says that he knows a rich guy who runs one for fun who pays very well even though there aren't many customers. Jia is confused how something like that can exist. But Yenduek hands her his business card and tells Jia to call him if she is interested because he can get her an interview. Jia is now walking home and acknowledges that working at the cafe sounds like a good offer. But she doesn't want to owe Yenduek anything because it would hurt her pride. Then, Jia spots Minchiel standing looking at his phone. She deduces that he has been standing there waiting so they can walk home together. Jia is glad and starts to run toward Minchiel. Jia collides with Minchiel and Minchiel is shocked to see Jia there. Jia playfully asks Minchiel questions regarding him being there. Minchiel just says yes and Jia asks if something is wrong with Minchiel's head since he didn't elaborate. Then, Jia realizes that she is hugging Minchiel in public and everyone is looking at them. Jia backs away, but then Minchiel hugs Jia and asks why she hasn't been answering his calls. Jia's phone was on silent and Minchiel was worried. Jia confirms that she is okay and wants to stop hugging because people are staring, but Minchiel insists they continue for a little long. Minchiel is always so nice to Jia that she feels bad for making him worry. She needs to put her pride aside to prevent Minchiel from worrying. So, she declares that she got a job working at a cafe, which means that she won't be jobless anymore. She will be heading to work tomorrow and she suggests that they go out and celebrate. Jia asks if Minchiel will risk losing all of his gains by having a cheat day today, and Minchiel says yes. Jia is glad to see Minchiel not worrying anymore. Him smiling is much better than seeing him worried. The next day, Jia arrives at the interview, and the owner is surprised Jia is on time. That aside, Jia is shocked because the owner is none other than Yenju. To recap what happened so far, Jia was living a completely normal life. Suddenly, she rediscovered the importance of working, but she didn't like any of the job offers she received so far. Then, she got a call from her old boss who was recruiting her for a job. Jia was suspicious of his offer, but she didn't realize Yenduek would trick her like this. As Jia is trying to figure out what to do, Yenju is reading off her resume. Jia dropped out of college, worked in a call center for 2 years, had a few part-time jobs, but no real work experience. Yenju notices that Jia is distracted and asks what's wrong. Jia doesn't know what to do since she hasn't spoken to Yenju for years. But, Yenju interrupts Jia's thinking by telling her to not worry because she wouldn't have interviewed Jia if she wasn't serious about hiring her. Yenju never thought she would meet Jia again and thinks she has seen enough of her resume. Then, she sees that Jia is married. Yenju is confused and takes off her glasses to confirm she saw it right. Upon closer inspection, she realizes Jia is actually married and is shocked. Jia recalls that Yenju Choi was the person responsible for all the good memories in college. Also, observe how Jia's old hair color is the same as Yenju's current hair color. Maybe this means Yenju hasn't moved on from the past. Yenju is the one who made Jia think that ambition is cool even though Jia had no aspirations. Today, Yenju has written dozens of novels, 3 of which are now TV shows. She only continued to grow after her debut and doesn't need luck like Jia did. But now, she is Jia's boss. Yenju is laughing at how Jia is married. She never imagined that the same girl who stayed up all night reading web novels in Yenju's room would be married. Jia reveals that her husband is her childhood friend and Yenju asks how they got married. Jia avoids the question. To prove that she is actually married, Jia shows her pictures from her honeymoon and Yenju is impressed. Jia thought their conversation would be awkward since they haven't seen each other in years. But it was actually quite pleasant and it feels as if they saw each other yesterday. Jia remembers Yenju always being awkward, but now that she has vast sums of money, perhaps her confidence comes from having enough to spare. It is as if there is a spotlight on Yenju. Before Jia leaves, she asks if it's really okay to be working full-time at the cafe. But, Yenju says it doesn't matter since she's the owner and can do whatever she wants. Jia's first day is on Monday and before her taxi leaves, Jia says it's been nice seeing Yenju. Yenju smiles and tells Jia to get home safe. Jia is now home and celebrating that she got a job. Minchiel is concerned. Yenju is at home and looking at an old picture of her and Jia. She smiles and says that she should be the one thanking Jia, implying she has been playing 4D chess the entire time and this is all part of her master plan. Meanwhile, Jia and Minchiel are blowing out candles on the cake to celebrate. It is now Monday and Jia is being introduced to the staff of Second Cafe. Yenju mentions that Jia and her went to college together. Yenju introduces the rest of the staff to Jia. Siu Li is one of their top baristas, and if Jia doesn't know what to do, he is the one to ask. The next person is Nari Ju. But they both recognize each other from when Nari was seducing Mincheol at the gym, and they are shocked to see each other. Nari turned 25 years old this year, and most people think she is narcissistic when she says she has great style and good looks. She wears earbuds without music so that she can hear people comment how good she looks. She even takes a route 10 minutes longer than necessary to show off to the common folk. She also works at Second Cafe, which at first glance seems ordinary, but it is far from it. It offers unmatched benefits, and since the last manager left, Nari was next in line to become manager. If she became manager, she would be living a life where she had everything she ever wanted. But Gia is the new manager. If only Gia hadn't shown up, she would have become manager. So, Nari complains to Yenju despite Siyu being there longer and contributing far more than her. She demands an explanation since Gia doesn't have a lot of experience in the industry, but Yenju counters by saying she is the owner so she can do whatever she wants, essentially saying skill issue to Nari as an explanation. Regardless, Nari is still outraged and wonders how Gia can have a hot husband and be friends with the famous author. Before things get awkward, Nari apologizes to Gia about what happened at the gym, but Gia doesn't make a big deal out of it and says that it is in the past now, so it doesn't matter. Nari is taken aback and thinks Gia not getting mad was cool. Nari still thinks Gia doesn't know the first thing about running a cafe and can't accept her as the manager. Gia asks Nari for help, but Nari is caught off guard and her voice cracks while saying sure. Gia is asking about a recipe, and Nari realizes that she doesn't have to actually help Gia. So, she taunts Gia by saying that it's embarrassing that the manager doesn't know this. But Gia says that's exactly why she's asking, so she knows when there are customers. Nari is shocked that Gia isn't flustered. Gia continues to ask questions despite Nari being rude, and she realizes that Gia isn't bad looking. Nari gets embarrassed and tells Gia to ask Siyu for help while walking away and discreetly flipping off Gia. She thinks Gia is annoying. Soon, an old man arrives and compliments Nari's appearance. She is annoyed that this customer is here of all people. The man asks for Nari's number, and when she tries to give him the store number, he gets mad because he spent a lot of money at the cafe. The least Nari could do is give him her number. Nari is annoyed and wishes he came when Siyu or the boss was here. Suddenly, Gia appears next to Nari and says that Nari should give him her number since the customer is always right. Nari is shocked. The man is excited that someone finally understands him, and Gia introduces herself as the new manager. Nari doesn't know what to do and can't believe what Gia is doing. Gia is writing something down on paper and hands it to the man, saying that it is the number he wanted. The man is excited because he just wants to take Nari on a drive and get something to eat together. But then he sees the number on the paper. It is 911, the emergency number. The man is outraged and Gia insists that he dial it. The man is angry and the entire cafe is staring at them. Gia suggests that she could dial the number for him, but this only makes the man more mad. The man pulls the classic, "Do you know who I am?" card. Gia uses an no reverse card and asks if the man knows who she is. The man is subdued and calmly says no, wishes them a great day, and leaves. After he leaves, Gia sighs and comments how she almost showed her true colors back there. Nari thanks Gia for her help and asks if Gia is okay because it might cause trouble with the boss or cause rumors. But Gia nonchalantly says that she will cross that bridge when she gets there, so there's no need to worry about something that hasn't even happened yet. Even if something happens, she would take full responsibility. Nari jokingly says it's fine as long as Gia takes full responsibility. Nari thought Gia wasn't the type of person to take responsibility and acknowledges that Gia standing up for her was pretty awesome. Then, Nari remembers that Gia is her enemy since she stole Mincheol in her manager position, even though Gia didn't steal Mincheol in the first place. Suddenly, another customer enters the cafe and asks for one hot iced Americano. Gia and Nari are speechless. It is villain number 2, the hot iced lady. She is a villain who occasionally pops up and chews you out if you get her order wrong. The lady continues by saying she wasn't expecting the same qualità and servizio as a cafe in Milano, but them not responding to her is rude. Gia looks frustrated and repeats the lady's order in her weird accent. Then, Gia gives the lady a cup of ice and a hot Americano so she can adjust how much ice she wants. The lady says Gia passes and leaves. Nari is shocked that that's all she had to do to satisfy the lady. Nari also notices that Gia does whatever she wants and seems fun. Jia continues to do strange things such as confronting loud customers and telling them they will take legal action for being too loud. When they complain, Jia calls the boss who gives them a refund and orders them to leave or her lawyers will file a lawsuit. Jia then asks Siyu for salt to cleanse the cafe. After observing Jia, Nari realizes that Jia is someone who makes everyone happy, so no wonder people want to be friends with her. Then, Nari notices Siyu staring at Jia and covers his eyes so she doesn't take Siyu away from her. In a black car, Yenduek asks the hot-iced lady how Jia was. She says that she is disappointed because Jia is clearly not satisfied with working in a cafe. The lady then asks why Yenduek is introducing Jia to her now. The lady is Yomi Na, the CEO of Yomi Entertainment. The cafe is now closed and Jia is saying bye to Nari and Siyu. A lot happened today, but nothing major. But there is one last thing Jia needs to take care of and tells a man with a box over his head to come out because she saw him hiding there for a while. Mincheol is shocked that Jia spotted him because of his perfect disguise, which is casual clothing. They are now walking home and Mincheol is still confused how Jia recognized him because he is wearing very different clothing and had a box on his head. Jia acknowledges that Mincheol put in some effort and asks why he is here, because he doesn't drink coffee and the cafe is out of the way. Mincheol can't think of anything and eventually says that he has a new workout routine, which is walking before going to the gym instead of running at the gym. Jia is surprised because she thought Mincheol was here to pick her up and smirks at Mincheol. Soon, Jia trips and before she hits the floor, she is in her bed with her face in her pillow. Her conversation was going so well until she tripped and fell. She thought she heard a crack from Mincheol's shoulder when he caught her, and she thinks something is wrong because he looked awful at the gym. Jia hopes Mincheol is okay and goes to check on Mincheol. Upon opening the door, she is greeted to Mincheol shirtless. Jia gets embarrassed and backs away, saying she is going to take a walk. But Mincheol is confused and Jia is now sitting in his gaming chair. Mincheol explains that he pulled his shoulder and back muscles when he caught Jia and was just about to put on pain relief patches. Jia is confused how Mincheol was going to put them on since he can barely reach behind himself. But Mincheol insists that he can. First, you lay the patches on the floor. Then, you roll around on the floor until they are stuck to your body. When you stand up, they should be on properly. But, they are not. Jia says she will put them on his back for him. Mincheol insists that he can do it himself. But Jia is already prepping another patch and tells Mincheol to be quiet. As Jia is inspecting Mincheol's back, she realizes nothing has changed since when they were kids. They would always scratch each other's back or apply ointment when it was out of reach. The only difference now is that Mincheol's back is a lot wider. Jia wonders what Mincheol eats to get his back that wide. Now that she thinks about it, she was on his back during the honeymoon. Jia starts to touch Mincheol's back and Mincheol calls out to Jia. Jia stops and Mincheol asks why Jia is rubbing his back. Jia is embarrassed and doesn't have an explanation other than his back is incredibly attractive. Jia saves herself by saying his shoulders are tense and starts massaging them. Mincheol is concerned, but Jia insists that his shoulders are like rocks. Jia is now massaging Mincheol back, and she feels this position can only lead to disaster. Mincheol looks at Jia without his glasses and comments how her nails are digging into his back, which hurts. Jia is embarrassed because Mincheol isn't wearing his glasses and apologizes. Jia continues the massage and acknowledges that she needs to get her mind out of the gutter because it is just a massage. 10 minutes later, Jia's hands hurt because Mincheol's back is massive. Maybe stepping on his back would have been more effective like she used to do for her dad. Regardless, Mincheol thanks Jia for the massage since he can move around just fine now. Jia is glad that Mincheol is happy and starts to head back to her room to sleep. But Mincheol stops her and insists he give Jia a shoulder massage in return. Jia declines in an attempt to escape, saying that she doesn't have any knots. But Mincheol didn't let that slide. Jia is now sitting on the bed as Mincheol is preparing to annihilate Jia's shoulders. Mincheol asks Jia to move her hair to the front and when she does, Mincheol begins his massage. But Jia is nervous for no reason and she thinks Mincheol isn't nervous. Mincheol gently places his hand on Jia's shoulder and Jia makes a noise. Mincheol thinks Jia must be in pain, but the pain is not in her shoulders, it is in her heart. Jia's heart is pounding very fast and loud and she thinks Mincheol can hear it. Even if he can't hear it, surely he can feel it. But Mincheol doesn't say anything. Did he not pick up on it or is he pretending he didn't notice? Regardless, the massage continues and suddenly, Gia screams in pain because Mincheol is pressing too hard. It feels like her shoulders are going to rip off and Gia tightly grabs Mincheol's arm with her nails and digs into it. This causes Gia to fall down on her back in pain, and when she opens her eyes, Mincheol is over her without his glasses. Gia is embarrassed. More importantly, the angle they are at is problematic. Gia is holding on the bed sheets tightly as if she is bracing for impact. She is concerned about what underwear she wore today and can't remember. But then she realizes she wore a matching set to feel more confident at work. Gia is relieved but then gets embarrassed. Why is she relieved that her underwear isn't mismatched? It's almost as if she is looking forward to doing it with Mincheol. Gia puckers up her lips and waits for Mincheol to kiss her. But Mincheol just stays there and after 10 seconds, she pushes Mincheol off her. Gia is annoyed that Mincheol didn't make a move. Nothing is going right for Gia today. She even messed up opening up a snack. But it wasn't really a failure. But Gia really thought Mincheol would kiss her. Maybe she was the only one expecting to kiss. Gia gets embarrassed at the thought of this. Mincheol and Gia both don't know what to do. But then Mincheol gets up and calls for Gia. Gia asks what's up and Mincheol hesitates and says that it's not good for her back to sit crouched down. When she sits, she would push her chest out to keep her back healthy. Gia makes her back straight and Mincheol gives her a thumbs up. Mincheol goes to take a shower despite just putting on the patches. Gia is now laying down on the sofa and is disappointed Mincheol didn't come over to give her a kiss. She thinks she is a fool for falling for stuff like that over and over again, but in reality, Mincheol is frustrated about what happened and is slamming the bathroom walls. He looks completely drained and stares at a pink toothbrush, which is presumably Gia's. Then, he picks it up. Gia is looking at the picture from their honeymoon and thinks Mincheol and her are what people call a trickster couple. Then, Mincheol appears and his sudden appearance scares Gia. Mincheol says he brushed his teeth and Gia is confused how that's relevant. Mincheol reveals that he ate cucumbers during dinner and Gia doesn't like the taste of cucumbers, which is why he didn't kiss her. Mincheol asks if he can do it now and Gia says yes. Then, Mincheol kisses Gia. After kissing once, Mincheol takes off his glasses and continues to kiss Gia. Gia is annoyed that Mincheol is so strict about the rules and thinks he should be more flexible. Suddenly, Mincheol puts his hand on Gia's waist and Gia is shocked by this. At Gia Han Construction, Miss Emotion tells Miss Reason that Mincheol Construction is on strike again. Miss Reason is annoyed since there's a lot to do. Then, a giant machine appears beside them with Mr. Flexibility from Mincheol Construction in it who says they should just work. Mr. Flexibility uses his machine to move the dirt while Miss Reason and Miss Emotion are in awe. Gia is shocked that Mincheol is being flexible, but she thinks this is a little too much. Gia thinks Mincheol needs to turn on the blinker before he turns, but he did and almost a little too much. Gia is impressed, but then realizes Mincheol is a guy so it was bound to happen. But Gia doesn't know what to do because she didn't think something like this would happen today. Mincheol slides Gia's shirt slightly up and starts to slide his hand in. Before too much happens, a phone buzzes. Mincheol and Gia don't know what to do and Mincheol goes in for another kiss. But Gia stops him and tells Mincheol to answer the phone. Mincheol goes to answer it and Gia is embarrassed. Gia is now sleeping and questioning why she said that. If she was drunk, she would have gone for it without hesitation, but she did it sober. She recalls them kissing and gets embarrassed again and starts violently punching a pillow. Gia questions if she has come to like Mincheol that much and doesn't know when it started. She didn't expect it to happen and starts to question what their relationship is anyway. Gia starts to ponder the possibilities, but is interrupted by Mincheol knocking on the door asking to come in. Gia is confused and lets Mincheol in. Mincheol is on his knees and looks nervous, and Gia is confused about what he is doing. Gia thinks that maybe he wants to continue, but then Mincheol says that his mom is coming over this weekend and asks Gia if that's okay. Gia is shocked. She tries to avoid the question by asking if Mincheol met Gia's mother is coming, but he confirms that his mother will be in town for business this weekend. Mincheol doesn't know why and they both look uncomfortable. Gia is still awkward around Mincheol's mother. In school, the bell rings and students rush out of the classrooms. This phase is called the stormy period of puberty. This normally happens in middle school and is where you can't control the energy inside you. Everyone wants to stand out and everything on the lunch menu tastes awful. Gia is ascending the school wall and her friend asks if it's really okay. Gia says it is because they feed prisoners of war better than them, so it's against the Geneva Convention. Gia's friend is concerned about what will happen if they get caught, but Gia says it's worth it. Then, Jia and her friend get caught by a lady holding a baguette and she has already subdued another escaping student. She directs them to get down and then smacks Jia and her friends behind with the baguette with such force that they can barely stand. This isn't violence. This is merely corporal punishment, and the teacher in charge of it at Jia's school was Minchul's mother. Jia thought she wouldn't be punished since it is Minchul's mother, but she was wrong. She actually used the baguette to punish Jia harder. To be fair, Jia did a lot to deserve punishment back then. But now that teacher is her mother-in-law. Jia is now watching baseball and says it reminds her of the old days. Minchul is confused since he didn't know Jia used to play baseball, but she confirms. Her position was the ball and Minchul's mother was the batter. Then, Minchul's mother, whose name is Jizian Zhang, arrives. They are now in a car and Jia notices that Minchul's mother is extremely healthy and wonders what she eats. Then, Minchul's mother comments how Minchul actually picked her up, which makes her happy even though Minchul's mother declines every time Minchul offers to pick her up. She asks if it was her daughter-in-law's ideas and Jia is confused until she realizes she is the daughter-in-law. Jia confirms that it is her, but since she is the daughter-in-law, she doesn't know how to call Minchul's mother. Jia texts Minchul for help, so naturally Minchul ignores it. Because of this, Jia asks Minchul to look at his texts, but Minchul's mother is concerned that they still call each other by their names. Jia and Minchul are both terrified about what she means by this, and Jia asks her to explain. Minchul's mom is just thinking out loud and says that ever since they talked about getting married, she felt some sort of incompatibility between them. This is a dangerous situation for Jia and Minchul. She continues by saying they were a bit awkward for people who were about to get married. Minchul's mom was always the type to pick up on the little things fast, especially when it came to Jia. Of course she is suspicious because they decided to get married an hour after Minchul got signed up for the dating service. But Minchul's mom says that maybe she's reading into too much, but points out that newlywed couples would normally not be able to get their hands off each other, and Jia and Minchul don't even call each other using pet names, which is strange. Jia diffuses the situation by saying that they only call each other by name occasionally, and Minchul's mom asks what they call each other usually. Jia tries to come up with something and recalls that they always call each other by name. Then, Jia says hey. Minchul's mother is confused that they call each other hey, and Jia looks away in embarrassment. Before Minchul's mom can continue, Jia yells out babe and tells Minchul to check his texts. Jia is embarrassed that she called Minchul babe. Minchul's mom deduces that they call each other babe and Minchul tells Jia to call his mom ma'am, which isn't very helpful. They are now at the apartment and the first round of the visit begins, which is home inspection. Minchul's mom slides her finger on a surface and closely inspects it. Then, she calls for Jia and Jia thinks this is going to be like one of the scenes in a soap opera between daughter-in-law and mother-in-law. Then, Jia's mom reveals that she saw a soap opera where the mother-in-law nags the daughter-in-law and wanted to try it out. Jia is relieved but is annoyed about the joke. But Minchul's mom says that Jia should clean up more since there's a lot of dust. Jia is concerned, but then Minchul's mom says that she's kidding and asks Minchul where she can unpack. Round 1 was a defeat for Jia. Round 2 is lunch. They are eating and Minchul's mom says the food is okay, but it is too sweet for her taste. Jia apologizes and says that her mom made it and she should have tasted it before serving. Next time, she will tell her mom to make it less sweet. But what Minchul's mom really meant is that it needs more rice to balance it out. This was 4 out of 5 stars thanks to Jia's mom. Round 2 was a close save. Round 3 is clean up and tea. They are all drinking tea, except Minchul who is drinking a protein shake. But since Minchul and his mom aren't talkative and Jia is too nervous to talk, it is silent. Jia doesn't know what to do and believes Minchul's mom isn't convinced their marriage is legitimate. Jia needs to distract her with something. Jia looks at Minchul and gets an idea. She asks if Minchul ever washes his shirt and Jia thinks Minchul's mom immediately got suspicious because Jia called Minchul by his name. But she is also curious because he always wears that red shirt. Minchul is being targeted and shows them his diverse wardrobe, consisting of exclusively the same red shirt. This is a challenge and today, Jia and Minchul's mom team up to fix his wardrobe. This day will forever be referred to as the first uprising of the Red Devils. During the 2002 World Cup, everyone was cheering, including Jia and Minchul. South Korea made it to the round of 16, and the Red Devil shirts sold like crazy. Almost everyone has one. But Minchul took it a step further and ordered them in bulk because he thought it was a good deal. Mincheol is being dragged to the clothing store. When they arrive, the employee asks what she can help them with, and Gia and Mincheol's mom say they need help with Mincheol. They go to the men's section, and Gia realizes that even if she gets rid of the red shirts, Mincheol still has checkered shirts, which are problematic. She needs to make sure Mincheol doesn't buy more of those. Suddenly, Mincheol's mom is fascinated by the vast array of checkered shirts. Gia now understands why he has so many of them, because checkered shirts are his mom's style. Mincheol's mom insists he tries them on, but Mincheol doesn't want to. She then asks Gia what color she likes, and she says both look fine despite not wanting either of them. Gia recently discovered why Mincheol's wardrobe is so bad. Firstly, he is an engineer, which means he prioritizes comfortability over everything else. Gia thought this was the only reason until now. Mincheol's mom likes checkered pattern shirts and pressures him into buying them. Gia doesn't understand why she likes check patterns. Maybe it's because she needs a graph on her fur when she scratches it. Despite their disinterest, the store employee loves the idea of Mincheol getting a checkered pattern shirt. This is likely to make the customer buy it. The employee asks what Mincheol does for work, and when he answers, she says the clothes suit him well. She even mentions their 3+3 event, but Gia doesn't care. She gives Mincheol some clothes to try on. When he does, the store employee is impressed because Mincheol looks very hot. Gia is impressed and thinks this is the bare minimum for Mincheol's wardrobe. It would be great if he dressed well, but Mincheol looks drained. Then, Mincheol's mom calls Gia, using the word daughter-in-law, and comments how the outfits are too plain, and suggests he tries the checkered shirts. The employee is shocked upon hearing that Gia is the daughter-in-law. Gia is confused why the employee isn't stepping in to help and is nowhere near them. She is actually now behind the counter taking a call, and Gia thinks it's because the employee is trying to avoid an argument. But the employee was probably interested in Mincheol and doesn't want to get involved now that she knows he is married. Mincheol's mom asks which side he agrees with, and he doesn't know. Upon careful consideration, Mincheol masterfully avoids the question by saying that all he cares about is comfort, and they are both comfortable. They then go to buy the clothes, and Gia acknowledges that not arguing was the best option and thinks he's grown a little. But Gia really would have preferred if Mincheol took her side. Then, Mincheol whispers into Gia's ear that he actually liked the ones she chose better. Gia is shocked and Mincheol is avoiding eye contact. Gia is glad and thinks that Mincheol said that so her feelings didn't get hurt. Then, Gia says that Mincheol won't get brownie points for complimenting her while pounding on his back. But then Gia realizes that Mincheol's mom saw them, and Mincheol's mom looks embarrassed. She tells them that this is a public space and turns around in embarrassment. Seeing her reaction gives Gia an idea. Gia tells Mincheol that they are going to make his mom less suspicious of their marriage and tells him the plan. They meet back up with Mincheol's mom, and Gia and Mincheol are wearing matching couple shirts. Mincheol's mom coughs in disbelief, and Gia justifies it by saying they were on sale. Gia came up with this plan because she remembered that her parents tend to show affection toward each other in public. Whenever they did this, Mincheol's mom got embarrassed, which means that she can't deal with romance. Gia's plan is foolproof. They just need to excessively flirt in front of Mincheol's mom, and she will stop being suspicious. So, Gia starts by calling out Mincheol and telling to walk slower in a cute manner. Mincheol is confused, and suddenly, he turns into a rooster. But the plan works since Mincheol's mom is too embarrassed to say anything. Gia is glad. They are now at a dessert cafe, and Gia tells Mincheol to say ah as she is holding a spoonful of the dessert. Mincheol insists that he can feed himself, but Gia puts the spoon in Mincheol's mouth anyway. But the plan is not flawless since acting all lovey-dovey too quickly is suspicious, so this is a huge gamble. While feeding Mincheol, she gets some on his cheek and decides to wipe it with her finger and eat it. Gia is not giving Mincheol's mom a break from her insanity. But Gia doing this alone isn't enough to clear suspicions. She needs Mincheol to cooperate and asks him to help do something couple-like. So, Mincheol tries to feed Gia and calls her a little birdie. Gia and Mincheol's mom are shocked. He went a little too far. They continued this until they got home. Mincheol's mom acknowledges that they are very close and suggests she leave so as to not intrude. But Gia insists she stays a few nights. But Mincheol's mom insists she leaves, which means Gia's operation was a huge success. Suddenly, it starts raining, so Mincheol's mom needs to stay the night. Gia and Mincheol are now in the same room and are getting ready to sleep. Gia suggests she sleeps on the floor, but Mincheol says no and insists they sleep together because they are married. Gia is embarrassed, but as they are getting into bed, Mincheol's mom peeks through the door and asks them to come out. Upon seeing them in bed, Minchul's mom thinks they are about to partake in spicy relations and says she'll be back in the morning. But Jia confirms that it's not like that. 15 minutes earlier, Jia and Minchul are in another room and Minchul's mom asks why there's a bed in a room that isn't Minchul's. Jia is nervous that they are going to get caught since they actually sleep in separate beds. Before Jia can make up an excuse, Minchul says he sleep talks and moves around while sleeping, which made Jia uncomfortable, so he bought a bed for Jia a few days ago so she can sleep well. Jia is impressed by Minchul taking initiative and giving a sensible answer for once. She never would have thought the dense muscle-head gamer who only cares about not losing his gains could be so sensible. Minchul's mom seems somewhat convinced until she points out that the bed looks well used, which is a contradiction, and asks if they bought it second-hand. Jia and Minchul are shocked. Back to the present, Jia is still worried that Minchul's mom caught onto their scheme even though they are sharing a room. But then Minchul's mom said she read something interesting recently and asks if they heard of a show Widow Couple. She says she will send it to them later, wishes them good night and leaves the room. Jia and Minchul are now alone and decided to sleep together for the first time. Minchul suggests that he leaves now that his mom left, but Jia knows that they must sleep in the same bed to avoid suspicion. Minchul suggests they sleep in opposite directions to maximize their space and comfort, but Jia doesn't like it, so they sleep in the same direction. They are back to back, which is embarrassing, but it would look like they are a real couple if Minchul's mom walks in. As this is happening, Minchul's mom is holding an envelope in her room. The only problem now is that Jia can feel everything Minchul does, like his heartbeat and his breathing because of their position. Jia is embarrassed, but then she sees Minchul shaking with his hand in a weird position and asks if Minchul is unwell. Minchul says that he's not sick, but when he sleeps on his side, his head doesn't match the pillow height because his shoulders are so jacked. But Minchul says it's fine because he will get used to it. Suddenly, Minchul apologizes for speaking up when his mom asked about the bed. To his surprise, Jia says that he did well because her mind went blank during that situation. Jia is glad, and she tells Minchul to lie down on his back so he is comfortable. Minchul is confused, but then Jia rests her head on his arm. If she does this, they can be comfortable and save space. But Jia is now bored and decides to quiz Minchul. Jia says she wants something from Minchul and asks Minchul to guess as she is repeatedly touching his chest. Minchul asks if he can have a guess, but Jia says no and says that he gets 3 points if he gets it right. Minchul thinks he figured it out and says that Jia wants a savings account with 1 billion won. The money would also be clean, so she doesn't have to call Saul Goodman to launder the money. This answer is tempting, but Jia says it's wrong. Minchul is confused, but Jia says it's something he can give her right now as a hint. Minchul asks if it is chicken feet. Jia says no, he says if she wants Minchoko. Jia threatens to murder Minchul. Jia is frustrated and says that Minchul is pretending to be stupid. Suddenly, Minchul's arms start to wrap around Jia and Jia panics. Minchul is now hugging Jia and Jia is embarrassed and shocked. Jia asks why he is doing this and Minchul responds by asking if this is what she wanted from the start. But Jia is too embarrassed to answer and Minchul keeps asking until Jia says that he is right and holds on to Minchul. Minchul is glad, but Jia doesn't know what to make of the situation. Minchul is smooth, but Jia's plan was to make fun of him before bed for fun. But Minchul's reaction was different than expected. Minchul then looks at Jia and touches her ear. Jia is shocked and doesn't know why he is doing this. Jia is concerned that Minchul wants to engage in a loud spicy activity and doesn't know what to do since Minchul's mom is in the next room. Jia thinks this is going too fast until she realizes that Minchul put an earplug in her ear. Minchul did this so Jia could sleep in peace, but Jia is confused what he means by this. Minchul says that Jia is scared of lightning, but Jia is confused how it is relevant and denies it. Minchul is confused because she flinches every time there is lightning because it is raining. But Jia thinks that she was like that because of Minchul's actions. Minchul continues saying that if she isn't scared, then why did she say that Minchul was right when he hugged her? After pondering the question, Jia gets embarrassed because she knows it was really because Minchul hugged her. Then Jia admits that she is very scared of the lightning and buries her head into Minchul's chest. Minchul thinks his guess was correct. Immediately after, he puts his sleeping mask on and wishes Jia good night. Jia thinks Minchul is sly like a fox. He is extremely dense sometimes, but also does what Jia subconsciously wants and she can't predict it. Moments later, Jia realizes that Minchul is just dense. He is giving her a bear hug while sleeping and Jia is trapped. She tries to escape, but Minchul's power even when asleep is simply too much to handle. If she moves the wrong way, she will be split in half. Gia calls out to Minchul to wake up, but he continues to hug her. In the morning, Minchul's mom is drinking a liquid and sees Mouse, Minchul's cat, attempting to enter a room. When Minchul's mom lets Mouse in, she looks inside to see Minchul and Gia peacefully sleeping in unorthodox positions and not even being covered by the sheets. Minchul's mom leaves the room. Later in the morning, Gia is awake and is staring down the meal Minchul's mom made, which is rice with various side dishes. Looking at such a display makes Gia's stomach upset. This is bad. Gia didn't get enough sleep. They are now eating and Gia thinks this is a scene right out of a morning drama. She anticipates she will get scolded and slapped with kimchi, but Minchul's mom probably won't go that far. Minchul's mom sees Gia isn't eating and asks if what's wrong and suggests that it isn't to Gia's liking. Gia says that she is fine, but she thinks that she will upset her stomach if she doesn't eat it. Then, Minchul comments how Gia's eyes are red and asks if Gia is not sleeping. Gia says that she is like this due to Minchul's terrible sleeping habits. Suddenly, Minchul's mom asks Gia if she can make time after they eat so they can talk one-on-one. Gia is shocked and doesn't know what Minchul's mom wants to say to her. Gia and Minchul's mom are now walking outside and Gia tries to figure out why she is here. She thinks they acted like a lovey-dovey couple, but they are against a formidable enemy, so maybe she could sense that Gia was just acting and that she has been caught. Minchul's mom stops and presents Gia with an envelope. Gia is confused, but then Minchul's mom clarifies that it is money, similar to what mother-in-laws do for daughter-in-laws in dramas. She tells Gia to do something with Minchul and she will give her more if she needs it. She is probably referring to divorce, but it isn't clear. Gia asks if she is joking and attempts to get out of the situation. Minchul's mom says she was kidding and Gia is confused. Minchul's mom wanted to joke around to lighten the mood since Gia seemed tense. Gia thinks it's hard to tell when Minchul's mom makes a joke. Gia is confused about what's inside the envelope and Minchul's mom tells her to look inside. Their marriage contract is inside and Gia is shocked. Minchul's mom says that she wasn't specifically looking for it, but she couldn't sleep and thought she would just give them some pocket money and leave. But then, she wanted to see their wedding photos and found it while searching for them. She asks Gia if she and Minchul have a sham marriage. Gia is shocked and knows that their operation has been compromised. Gia tries to cover it up by saying it's not what it looks like, a typical move that clearly indicates that it's exactly what it looks like. But Gia knows that their execution was sloppy. They should have hit it somewhere harder to find than behind their wedding pictures. Gia doesn't know what to do since Minchul's mom has hard evidence of what they did. Gia thinks she is screwed. But then, Minchul's mom reveals that it's fine because she knew about it from the start. Gia is confused. Minchul's mom tells Gia to look at it from her perspective. Minchul came home on New Year's and she signed him up for a marriage matchmaker. Only 2 hours later, he brought over a girl that he decided to marry, and the girl just happened to be Gia, someone Minchul knew his entire life. Of course it was suspicious, but Minchul's mom is glad that he married Gia because deep down, she had always wished for this outcome. Minchul's mom tells Gia to take good care of Minchul and says that she will cheer them on. Gia is confused because she thought Minchul's mom was going to break them up since she knew that their marriage was a sham. But Minchul's mom sees no point in breaking up a perfectly functioning couple. If Gia and Minchul wanted to break up, then they should figure that out for themselves since they are adults. Gia didn't realize this until now. Minchul's mom was concerned about their relationship before visiting, but after seeing them in action, she is relieved to see that they are both happy. She is also relieved to see that Gia is the same person she knew a long time ago. Gia is taken aback by this. Minchul's mom is now in a taxi and comments how dealing with her must have been tiring. Gia denies this. Before she leaves, Minchul's mom says that she wants their firstborn to be a daughter. Gia is embarrassed and Minchul's mom leaves. Gia and Minchul survived Minchul's mom's visit despite being a fake couple. They even got pocket money, which makes it seem like they scammed Minchul's mom. Regardless, Gia and Minchul compliment each other on how they did well. Suddenly, Minchul asks if he can ask Gia something. Gia doesn't respond, but Minchul asks his question anyway. He asks Gia if his mother said anything weird. As Gia ponders this, she recalls how she told Minchul's mom that their marriage isn't loveless because she has fallen for Minchul. Minchul's mom thought this was just an act, but Gia insisted that it is real. Instead of answering Minchul's question, she starts vigorously pounding on Minchul's back and realizes that this needs to be done now. Gia asks Minchul if they should start going out for real. Minchul is confused. Gia attempts to justify it by saying that to avoid situations like this where they have to act like a lovey-dovey couple, they should just become a real couple. Suddenly, Minchul grabs Gia's hand and says that he is fine with becoming a real couple. But the reason why he wants to is not for Gia's reason. Minchul pins Gia to the wall and declares that he likes Gia and says they should go out. Gia is confused and asks if Minchul likes her romantically, and Minchul nods his head to confirm this. Gia asks when he started to feel this way and Minchul says not since when, even now, which means that he has probably liked Gia for a long time. Gia is confused by this and Minchul just says that he likes Gia now. Gia looks away and is embarrassed. Then she says that if Minchul really likes her, then if he kisses her in the next 5 seconds, she will determine how to move forward. Minchul is shocked and is concerned that they are doing this in public. Gia gets embarrassed and comments that Minchul already slammed her against the wall and held her hands, so it does matter. If Minchul kisses her in the next 5 seconds, they will start going out. Gia starts counting down from 5 and Minchul is leaning in to kiss Gia. But before he can do it, a female enters the elevator they are in and Minchul and Gia separate. The female is confused and then realizes what is happening, so she starts to leave the elevator. But Gia stops her saying that it's not like that even though it is exactly like that. They are riding the elevator, and the female is sweating profusely. Due to the awkward atmosphere, it feels like the elevator is going very slowly. Gia attempts to calm down and reflect on what just happened. What she did was too fast. Her sense of judgment is off today. Suddenly, Minchul taps on Gia's shoulder and directs her to look at her phone. Minchul texted her if it's fine if he kisses her 5 seconds from now since they were interrupted. Gia is shocked and asks Minchul if he is crazy because someone is in front of them. Suddenly, Minchul grabs Gia's shoulder with a single hand and swiftly pulls her toward him. Minchul's mom is in a car and looking through a book containing a picture of Gia and Minchul sleeping together as kids in the same position they were sleeping in last night. She thinks it would be nice if they were more honest with each other. Minchul pulls Gia in and aggressively kisses her. Upon separating, Gia quickly pulls herself back in and intensely kisses Minchul. Gia's forehead hit Minchul's glasses, so after he adjusted those, they continued to kiss. With this, Minchul and Gia are now dating. The female in the elevator with them is disgusted and is going to pretend she didn't see that. During Gia and Minchul's primary school days, there was a doodle drawn on the board implying that Gia and Minchul are in love with each other. 20 years later, the doodle became the truth, and they are now in love with each other. Later at the cafe, Nari asks if Gia has seen a dermatologist recently since her skin is glowing. Gia happily responds by saying that Nari won't get anything out of complimenting her. Gia's aura is emitting a blinding light, but Nari didn't compliment Gia, she just wants to know which place Gia went to. Then, Nari realizes that perhaps Gia's expression is what actually changed and suggests that Gia engaged in intense adult activities with Minchul. Gia gets embarrassed and tells Nari to do her job. To defend herself, Nari clings to Siyu for protection and comments how the more Gia denies it, the more true it is. Gia didn't know her expression changed that much. This is probably because Minchul has been bringing her gifts after he comes home from work. Having someone think about her and share her happiness with is the best feeling. However, every day after work, Minchul continues to bring home large displays of food as a gift. Gia accepts them, but is not impressed. It is too much food. Even Mouse agrees that it is too much. Gia knows that Minchul enjoys bringing her gifts, but she doesn't want to kill Minchul's vibe because he is doing it out of love for her. Gia spots the scale in the distance and upon stepping on it, a beam of light comes out of the apartment, indicating that the Gia has gained weight. Minchul is now banned from bringing food on his way back from work. Minchul is confused, but Gia says that if he continues to bring her food, she will gain weight. Then she corrects herself saying that she already gained weight. Minchul comments how everything has 0 calories if you enjoy it. But Minchul didn't even eat any of the food. He has been too busy trying to not lose his gains by eating chicken breast. So Gia suggests that Minchul get her something other than food if he is going to get a gift. Minchul points out how Gia once said that she prefers consumable items rather than novelty items and Gia is shocked he remembered. But Minchul concedes and says he will get something else, like flowers. Gia is fine with this as long as it's not very often. Minchul returns from work the next day with a massive array of flowers. Gia is taken aback by this. Minchul technically did exactly what Gia said to do because they are flowers. Minchul asks Gia what's wrong, and Gia asks Minchul why he bought it. Minchul justifies it by saying that Gia said flowers were okay, and since bigger is better, he bought that. Mincheol noticed they were on sale, but Gia says the price isn't the problem. It's the scale of the gift. Gia sits down and points out to Mincheol that his gifts are a burden. Mincheol is confused, but Gia says that it got annoying after the first 2 times. She is grateful for them because they are gifts, but they are too much and made Gia think if she got in a relationship only to receive gifts. Mincheol understands and apologizes. Gia says he doesn't have to apologize and asks why Mincheol got her so many gifts in the first place. Mincheol says that he did it to make her happy, and Gia says that is exactly the problem. Gia doesn't want gifts, she wants Mincheol, but doesn't finish her sentence. Upon hearing what she just said, Gia gets embarrassed and walks away saying that buying gifts is banned. But, before she can leave, Mincheol grabs her arm and he tells her to finish her sentence. Gia clarifies by saying that there are other ways Mincheol can make Gia happy other than buying her gifts. So, Mincheol asks what these things are. Gia is confused, but Mincheol clarifies that Gia said she wants something from him other than gifts. Mincheol seductively grabs Gia's hand and says that he must know this critical information so he doesn't make the mistake again. Gia and Mincheol blankly stare at each other until Gia grins and says that Mincheol is amazing. Mincheol is confused, but Gia gets angry that Mincheol is pretending to know again. She continues by saying that recently, Mincheol pretends to not be aware of the situation and uses this to mess with her. Gia takes Mincheol's glasses off his face and puts it on her face, saying that Mincheol is acting all high and mighty. Mincheol is still confused and asks Gia to clarify. He asks if he did something wrong, and Gia says no while putting his glasses back on his face. As Gia is walking away, she says that she is actually complimenting Mincheol and gives him 80 to Gia points today, which means that he needs to try harder next time. Mincheol is confused what Gia points are, and Gia stops in her tracks and is shocked that she needs to explain such a simple concept to higher life form like Mincheol. Gia explains that it is a rating for how close she was to falling for Mincheol a second time. Gia then answers Mincheol's previous question by saying that Mincheol doesn't need to overthink it and should just act natural. This is enough to make Gia happy. Gia then heads into the room to go to bed, and Mincheol is left speechless on the couch. Mincheol proceeds to intensely investigate his hand and recalls holding hands with Gia while asking himself what his usual self really is. Gia is on the other side of the door and immediately leans back on the door in embarrassment for making that speech. She tried to act all tough and couldn't be honest with herself. Gia was the one who wasn't acting naturally. But Gia thinks Mincheol is a fool because if he pushed a little harder, the situation could have gotten spicy. Suddenly, Mincheol opens the door without knocking and pushes Gia on the floor in the process. Mincheol came to say that he thought about it and understood what Gia meant when she told him to act like his usual self and asks Gia if she is referring to the thing they do that has the letters X. Mincheol is standing with a stone-cold expression, but Gia is confused until she realizes Mincheol is referring to spicy time. Gia realizes that she made a fatal mistake by giving Mincheol space and decides she needs to take back control of the situation. So naturally, Gia looks away from Mincheol and says that Mincheol can do whatever he wants. Mincheol is confused by Gia's reaction, but Gia just accepts it and will worry about it after it's done. Mincheol suggests they head to the location now. Suddenly, they are at the gym while Gia is squatting and Mincheol is cheering her on. Gia realizes that Mincheol was referring to exercise. Exercise technically is the usual, so this shouldn't be a surprise. But Gia is struggling because she has been slacking off due to work. They are now headed back home and Gia is riding Mincheol's back because she took leg day too far. But even now, Gia is still happy and doesn't regret dating Mincheol. The next day, Suyin is traversing the streets while eating a Choco Taco when she sees Sangyu walking with a female who is wrapped around his arm. Suyin stops in her tracks at this sight and starts having a panic attack, so severe that she drops her Choco Taco. Suyin is now in the car with Sangyu and she thinks that he has been suspicious lately. She feels like Sangyu is watching her closely and he is hiding his phone for some reason. Suyin asks Sangyu about his dinner plans and he reveals that he already has plans with a certain person he is indebted to. The person he is indebted to was this mysterious woman from the start. Suyin is irritated and puts her contaminated Choco Taco into the garbage. Suddenly, Suyin and the woman make eye contact and Suyin attempts to hide to not get caught. But the woman didn't seem to notice since she didn't have a reaction and just kept walking. More importantly, Suyin notices that they are very close and she thinks they are maybe old friends. Suyin's heart drops at the thought of this and hopes they are just friends. Suyin has hope that Sangyu isn't the type of person to cheat on her and she rushes down the road to catch up. Sang-yu and the woman are together, and he thanks her for her help and refers to her as his sister, so she is probably one of his 3 sisters. But the woman says that her time isn't free and recalls that Sang-yu promised to take care of her today. Sang-yu bows to her and asks where their next location is. The woman is flattered. They are now eating and Suyin is close by and spying on them. But this wasn't intentional. She just happened to run into them. The woman asks Sang-yu how the food is and repeatedly asks if it's yummy. But Sang-yu is struggling from how spicy the food is and is drinking water to cope. The woman says that Sang-yu is still a child, and he thinks she is drunk. But Sang-yu has never seen the woman drunk and she references the time Sang-yu passed out without pants on the street. She continues by aggressively wiping Sang-yu's face. This made Suyin uncomfortable, so she fled the scene. This wasn't the woman's intention because she wanted Suyin to confront her, but she didn't. Suyin is walking and she is frustrated because Sang-yu told her that he is with a friend. But that woman was clearly not just a friend because they were too close. Suyin thinks maybe Sang-yu has been lying to her about how he loves her this whole time. But Suyin aggressively slaps her cheeks and decides she won't be mad until she knows exactly what's going on. But first, she must eat. As Suyin is eating macarons, Sang-yu and the woman appear. They appear everywhere Suyin goes, and she suspects the woman is predicting where she is going. Soon, the woman enters the bathroom and Suyin is standing there waiting for her. She tells the woman to tell her whatever she wants to tell her instead of following her around all day. The woman stands there smiling and is confused. Suyin continues by saying that it seems like the woman has been following her. The woman asks if Suyin knows her from a wedding or birthday and notes that she has a hard time memorizing faces. But Suyin confirms that it's their first time meeting. Then the woman comes to the realization that this is because of Sang-yu. Suyin is confused how she knows him, but the woman says that every day, they used to eat together and slept under the same roof. Suyin is shocked and the woman asks how Suyin knows him. Suyin looks at the ground and says he's just a work colleague. The woman understands and asks how Sang-yu is adapting to the job. But Suyin ignores the question and declares that she is Sang-yu's girlfriend. The woman is astonished and they meet up with Sang-yu, who is mad that the woman would mess with Suyin like that. But she was just enjoying herself. But she still apologizes to Suyin. The woman introduces herself as Sang-yu's oldest sister, Yenji Choi. Suyin also introduces herself. Yenji ponders the situation and then says that Suyin is her sister-in-law. Suyin is shocked and Yenji asks if she can call Suyin sister-in-law because she is her brother's girlfriend. Suyin agrees. Yenji has a lot to ask Suyin, but that is not today's problem and she leaves. Suyin respectively bows to her and Sang-yu flips her off. Suyin and Sang-yu are walking together, and Sang-yu apologizes because his sisters always mess with him. Suyin understands, but Sang-yu is confused why Suyin is here in the first place because she worked from home today. Suyin lies and says that she needed to buy something and her eyes met with Yenji by chance. Sang-yu changes the topic by saying that he needed his sister's help and then apologizes. Suyin thinks it's about Yenji, but he is apologizing for something else. Sang-yu has been hesitating telling Suyin about this and doesn't know if it's the right choice. Suyin is devastated. She immediately thinks it's the worst case scenario and thanks Sang-yu for everything. They have been dating for a few weeks and she has been happy, but it didn't work out. Suyin starts crying but Sang-yu stops her. Suyin asks if Sang-yu has been avoiding her and he says no. Then Sang-yu musters up some courage and presents Suyin with a jewelry box. This is to show that Sang-yu and Suyin are lovers. Suyin is shocked and Sang-yu asks if she will accept it. It is assumed that she accepted. Back to Mincheol and Jia. They have just returned and Mincheol notes that Jia worked hard in the gym today, so he wanted to give her a reward. The reward is a surprise attack and he tases Jia. This is supposed to be a pun in Korean. Reward and fatal wound contain the same symbol. Suddenly, Jia wakes up from this dream and wonders why she dreams about weird stuff after leg day. Jia is walking and is in immense pain because it's been a while since she last worked out and Mincheol worked her too hard yesterday. This is going to affect her work. Suddenly, Mincheol appears in front of Jia with wet hair and no glasses. Jia admires Mincheol's hot appearance and he is confused why Jia is like that. Jia is questioning if Mincheol has always been this handsome. While Mincheol is making a chicken breast smoothie, he asks if Jia wants protein powder, but she says she's fine with the normal chicken breast smoothie. Jia now realizes that Mincheol has always been handsome when he isn't wearing his glasses. Jia recalls something about when Mincheol was young, and she comes to a profound realization. Mincheol thinks Jia's change in expression means she wants protein powder, but she doesn't and chugs her chicken breast smoothie. Jia recalls that Mincheol was pretty good looking when he was younger. When they were in elementary school, Jia applied makeup to Mincheol. After they were done, Mincheol washed it off and Jia felt bad even though it was practice for the talent show. Mincheol leaves the bathroom and Jia apologizes and tells him to not be mad, but Mincheol isn't mad. Jia continues to apologize and says that it was her first time seeing him without glasses and he was cuter than expected, so she couldn't help herself. Mincheol takes offense to this and says to not call him cute. Since he's a guy, Jia should call him handsome. Mincheol wonders why even his family think he looks cute without glasses. Jia thinks this is funny and then says that Mincheol looks manly with his glasses on. She makes fun of Mincheol by saying that people call him cute because of his big eyes and long eyelashes, but he covers them up with glasses which look manlier. Mincheol asks if this is really true and Jia says no. Back to the present, Jia realizes that interaction was more important than she realized. So, she asks Mincheol if he is wearing his glasses to look cool. Mincheol is confused, but Jia says she is asking because he has been wearing the same glasses since he was little. Mincheol says he wears them because they are comfortable and very practical since he stares at a computer all day. Also, the big lenses put less stress on the eyes, and he has anti-blue light lenses for additional help. Jia is disappointed and thinks that her comment didn't drastically change Mincheol's life. Jia and Mincheol are now outside and part ways to go to work. As Mincheol is walking, he recalls the same scene as a child Jia was thinking about and smiles about it, indicating that he wears his glasses to look manly. Regardless, Jia would still like Mincheol to not wear glasses. Nari sees Jia thinking about this and asks what's wrong. Then, Jia notices something and is shocked. Nari is reading one of her books. When Jia published her first book, she appeared at a bookstore and bought it. Everyone at the bookstore was also there to buy her book. After, Jia ran home celebrating her accomplishment and the bag rips, making her books go flying. Back to the present, Jia is wondering why Nari is reading her book. She wonders if the book is even still on sale and thinks it's just a coincidence that she's reading it. But, even after all these years, seeing someone reading her book is still embarrassing. Jia wants to know what she thinks, so she nervously asks Nari how the book is. Nari is scared by Jia's face, and she says the book sucks. Jia is shocked. She says it's cringe and reads like a teenager wrote it but is also a fun read. Jia blushes from hearing this, and she asks Nari why she is reading it. Nari says she's reading it for her book report. Jia is confused and Nari explains that it's the cafe's best benefit. The boss handpicks a book every Monday and puts it on a bulletin board. If you write a report about it and hand it in, you get 100,000 won immediately. Jia is shocked. Nari continues by saying that if you turn in a report every week for a year, the boss will pay for a vacation. Jia is confused why Yenju would do this, but Nari explains that it helps the boss with her writing and she wants people to read her favorite works. The report needs to be 500 words excluding spaces. There are 4 weeks in a month, so she can make 400,000 won extra per month. Jia is skeptical and asks Nari if this is an April Fool's joke. But Nari asks Jia why she would lie about it and says the boss will even buy the books for you. After work, Jia and Mincheol are walking home and Mincheol asks if something happened at work today because Jia's expression looks bad. Jia asks Mincheol if he could get 100,000 won for writing a book report. Would he do it? Mincheol thinks it is a scam, but Jia says it's not. Mincheol does the math and says that that is 200 won per word. This is enticing, but Jia should be cautious because maybe it is a pyramid scheme. This makes Jia feel stupid, so she kicks Mincheol. At home, Jia picks up her book and she feels bad about it, but it is too good to refuse. Jia feels guilty about this because she told Yenju that she won't write anymore. But it's fine because it's just a report. Jia's former selves assemble and her former self angrily points out that writing a report is still writing. But Jia tells her former self to shut up and thinks that if Yenju gets mad at her, she can just apologize. Jia starts writing and quickly finishes and sends it over. Immediately after, Jia was sent 100,000 won and she leaves the room to show Mincheol it's not a scam, but he still thinks it's a pyramid scheme. Yenduek and Yenju are drinking wine and he's surprised Yenju got Jia to write again. Yenduek thinks a book report isn't exactly writing, but Yenju points out he never specified what type of writing he wanted Jia to do. Regardless, Yenduek is impressed that Jia's book report is exactly in her style. It's casual and sucks you in. He's also surprised Yenju pulled this off for only 100,000 won, but she points out it wasn't the money that did this. She created an atmosphere that was comfortable and where Gia could make her own rules. Here, she could put her passion onto paper and share it with her colleagues. This eventually will bring writing back into Gia's daily life. Yenduek thinks Yenju spent a long time planning this out, but instead of answering it, she asks if Gia writing makes him happy. Yenduek says that Gia's writing is strangely funny, but points out that the one who likes Gia's writing more than him is Yenju. Yenduek thinks Yenju has been influencing Gia's life from the side, but Yenju says it's none of his concern and it's time to deal with their bet. The bet was if Yenju could get Gia to write, Yenduek had to drink anything she gave him. Yenduek denies this, but when Yenju threatens to cancel her book deal, he instantly agrees. Before he starts, he asks Yenju if it's really okay if he does this because if he makes a mistake, it will be her fault. Yenju ignores the question and tells Yenduek to drink. Yenduek chugs the glass of wine and Yenju applauds him for it. Yenju then gives him some snacks and Yenduek is relieved until he sees an array of strange snacks. Then, Yenju fills his glass back up with wine and tells Yenduek to drink. If he falls asleep before Yenju, he has to come back and do this again. 3 hours later, Yenduek passes out. Yenju is impressed he lasted this long and leans toward him. She touches his hair and then moves his face and mouth. Yenju leans toward Yenduek's lips and almost kisses him, but they are interrupted by the phone ringing. It's a call from Yenduek's son, and Yenju answers the phone. His son instantly recognizes her voice, implying something happened between Yenju and Yenduek in the past. Back to Minchiel and Gia. Gia is cursing out Minchiel while he's flexing. We must go 1 hour in the past to understand how this happened. Gia got the money from the book report and Minchiel is impressed with Gia's work benefits. Minchiel is now playing a famous fighting game and is on a 3-game winning streak and Gia is impressed by Minchiel's character. They have been dating for 2 weeks and being around each other makes them happy, and this is how it should be. But nothing else has really changed. Minchiel is still always gaming, and while Gia doesn't expect him to be romantic, she thinks it would be nice if they acted more like a couple. Then, Gia gets an idea and she challenges Minchiel to a match in the game. Minchiel and Gia are now playing on the sofa and Minchiel has that gamer posture. This is exactly what their relationship needed, and they decide that the loser has to do whatever the winner wants. All Gia needs to do is beat Minchiel a single time. This is a brilliant idea, and no matter what happens, it should create a good atmosphere for their relationship. The plan is flawless. Minchiel says that if he wins, they will go jogging. Gia thinks it's a joke because they already exercise a fair amount, and she wants it to be something romantic. But Minchiel never jokes about exercise, and Gia's plan to spice up their relationship could be ruined if she loses. They are now intensely gaming and Gia thinks Minchiel will go easy on her. But he doesn't and is more focused than before. Gia is very close to winning the round, but suddenly, Minchiel one-shots her. Gia decides to cuss out Minchiel and Minchiel emotes on Gia. Gia is devastated, but Minchiel tells her to not feel so bad since he has a massive advantage. But Gia does not admit defeat despite losing 10 games in a row. Minchiel says they have work tomorrow and decides to consider her almost winning a victory. But Gia says no because Minchiel is pitying her, which is worse than before, and says they should play just one more. Minchiel agrees and Gia says she'll know if he loses on purpose. It is now 3:46 a.m. and Gia has lost every match. She insists on going one more round despite Minchiel being visibly exhausted, but he agrees. Gia has discovered the secret to winning. In order to make the game fair, Gia will be sitting on Minchiel's lap. Minchiel is confused because he can't see the screen, but that's the point. They begin playing and Gia's plan is finally working because she is winning. Suddenly, Minchiel picks Gia up by her legs and she is now upside down. The odds are now in Minchiel's favor. To counter this, Gia starts pinching him. After a long-fought battle, Gia wins and has Minchiel in an armbar. Gia celebrates and she wants to hear Minchiel's thoughts about losing to his rookie wife in a fighting game. Minchiel is devastated. He begs for one more round, but Gia says no because she doesn't want to fight weaklings. Minchiel admits defeat. He says that if Gia would go to such lengths to win, there is something she really wants him to do. But Gia forgot what she was going to do. Suddenly, a small devil Gia appears and tells her that this is her chance to leave a deep impression on Minchiel. But the devil Gia is stopped by an angel Gia telling her they should engage in a particular spicy activity. Gia crushes the angel Gia in embarrassment. Suddenly, Minchiel calls out to Gia and suggests that they should go to sleep soon. But Gia knows that she won't get an opportunity like this again, so she tells Mincheol to come to the park entrance on Saturday at noon. He will be slapped once for every second he's late. While Gia is waiting at the park, the devil and angel Gia are calling her a coward because she could have gone all the way back there. But Gia is more concerned about how she barely got herself to tell Mincheol to come here. It is 5 minutes until noon and Mincheol still isn't here despite him leaving the house an hour ago. Gia thinks Mincheol went to the gym, but surely he wouldn't do that on a day like this. Then, Gia hears her name being called in the distance. She looks and is shocked at what she sees. It is Mincheol with no glasses and fashionable clothes. He looks incredibly hot. Gia compliments his outfit and comments how she's surprised Mincheol knows how to dress like that. Mincheol reciprocates by saying Gia looks pretty. Gia brushes it off, but her heart is racing. They leave for the renowned sushi restaurant where Mincheol has a reservation, and Gia questions if he's really Mincheol. But this doubt fades away as they have a light workout to help digest the sushi, which is really just bowling. Gia is having fun and didn't expect this because their hobbies don't overlap. Now that she thinks about it, Gia realizes that Mincheol and her have always had fun together since they were little, so maybe they aren't so different after all. After bowling, Mincheol's behavior changes again as he's being oddly considerate by going shopping, watching a movie, and he even risks losing his gains by drinking beer at a bar. But this isn't abnormal behavior because Mincheol has always tried his best when he can't do something, and this is the result of that. Seeing his efforts makes Gia happy and gives Mincheol 100 Gia points for the date, but it could have been higher. Mincheol claims he didn't do anything special. But when Gia suggests they drink beer like this every night, Mincheol knows he's been checkmated. Before they continue, Gia asks how far Mincheol intends to take their date tonight, which results in them sitting there in awkward silence for 5 minutes without using their phones. This makes Gia panic and Devil Gia thinks she should take it all the way and secure Mincheol. Angel Gia decides to agree with Devil Gia because today is the perfect opportunity and might not come again. This prompts Gia to break the silence by asking how far Mincheol is going to take it again. Mincheol says he's going to take it all the way. What a Chad. Mincheol grabs Gia's hand and repeatedly asks how far Gia planned to take it tonight. Their nice romantic moment is ruined by Siyu mistaking Mincheol for someone trying to pick up Gia. Nari had warned him not to do it, but he did anyway. She continues by asking if Gia and Mincheol are on a date, and Gia claims they're just on a walk, which is a blatant lie. Gia asks if Nari and Siyu are on a date, and they avoid the question. Soon, they all leave and Mincheol apologizes for being too pushy at the bar. But this is exactly what Gia wants and she loved it and she thought this was the perfect date. But there was a problem. Gia didn't like how Mincheol was trying to be someone he isn't for Gia because she likes him the way he is now. Taking this into account, Gia reduces her score for the date to 98 Gia points because Mincheol apologized earlier and prefers confidence. Mincheol takes this personally and surprises Gia by hugging her while she's walking away to make up for the lost points. But Gia avoids the question by claiming she's feeling hot, which is from her heart racing. Mincheol apologizes thinking she was referring to the temperature, but Gia doesn't like that because she just told him to stop apologizing. Suddenly, Gia pulls Mincheol in and kisses him. Gia did this as an example of what Mincheol should be doing because showing affection for each other is normal for couples. Her point is that it's okay for Mincheol to make mistakes and he doesn't have to apologize for something that isn't wrong. Hearing this prompts Mincheol to suddenly kiss Gia. Before they go home, Mincheol wants to go to the convenience store. While Gia is waiting outside, she thinks Mincheol is getting something starting with the letters CON. He could be getting Korean hangover medicine, but she thinks it's unlikely. Gia thinks the only reasonable conclusion is that Mincheol is preparing for a certain spicy activity. While Gia is waiting outside, someone recognizes her. Back when Gia was a sophomore in college, she met Gang Yu-jo. He is tall, everyone loves him and even covered Gia with his jacket, so he appeared to be friendly. They have been reunited at the convenience store 10 years after college. They exchange friendly greetings, but then Mincheol appears and apprehends Gang Yu because he thinks he's trying to pick up Gia. Gia diffuses the situation before Mincheol breaks his arm, and she introduces Mincheol as her husband. Before they leave, Gang Yu says they should meet up because her other friends from college are worried about her. Gia and Mincheol are now going home in a taxi, and Gia says that Gang Yu is just someone she knew in college. But he really isn't because something traumatic happened between them in college. Meanwhile, Gang Yu arrives home and tells someone named Jisoo who Gia knew in college that he ran into Gia today. She is shocked. 2 days later, Gia and Mincheol haven't made any progress in their relationship, and Gia blames it on Gang Yu. She tries to fix it by reassuring that nothing is going on between her and Gang Yu even though they had a crush on each other in college. Mincheol claims he's not worried because he knows it's hard for Jia to talk about, but she still thinks he's worried. Jia and Gang Yu's relationship wasn't special. But if she could erase anything from her life, she would erase her time at university where she met him. At university, they got closer because they were in the same major. They would share notes and go out to eat together, and as a result, Jia became interested in him. Soon, rumors started going around that they were dating. Jia and Gang Yu denied these claims because they weren't true. Around that time, Gang Yu started to jokingly ask Jia out, and she kept declining because she didn't want rumors to spread further. Despite this, Jia still hung out with him because he was fun to be around. Later at a party, a buff guy who looks like he's going to cause trouble asks if Gang Yu really isn't dating Jia. This guy is the class head Kang Juho. This is inconvenient because Jia became the class representative of the business major because she used her godly luck to get into this prestigious university, and her academic ability is terrible, meaning she can't do any other major. This means Jia has to get along with Kang because they collaborate. Unfortunately for Jia, Kang has a terrible reputation. It's easy to see why, because here, he asked Jia to be his wing woman on a blind date to make him look better, except there wasn't a blind date and he just wanted to ask her why she doesn't have a boyfriend. Jia avoids the question by saying she has high standards and is annoyed at Kang for setting this up. After, Jia consults with her longtime friend Yu Jisu about why people like Kang keep bothering her. Yu solves Jia's problem by suggesting she date him. Jia is outraged and doesn't want to date Kang. But what Yu meant is that Jia should date Gang Yu. They are already close, so it wouldn't look unnatural, so she should try it out. This is exactly what Jia does, as she asks Gang Yu out and he accepts. But their relationship is more so to maintain her peaceful life than anything, so it's not real, just like her and Mincheol's relationship was. With this, Jia's life is more peaceful than before, and she's growing to like Gang Yu more. So, Jia consults with Yenju about this, and she's annoyed that Jia is bragging about her relationship and didn't help her at all. Jia had the ideal life with decent grades, a boyfriend and good social circle, but this all came to an end when Jia entered this classroom. Everyone was looking at her as if she did something wrong, and Kang entered behind her. In the Silla period, there was a fable called the Ballad of Xiadong. The main character Xiadong came from humble origins and was infatuated by Princess Xianhua, who was the most sought-after woman in the Silla kingdom, and it was time for her to get married. In an attempt to seduce her, Xiadong got children to sing inappropriate songs about him and Xianhua together. This caused a scandal which ruined Xianhua's reputation, and they eventually got married. This is exactly what happened to Jia here. False rumors had spread that she and Kang had hooked up, and showing up to class together wearing the same clothes as yesterday didn't help the situation. While walking down the hall, Jia confronts Kang about it, but he claims he didn't know about the rumors and isn't worried. He tells Jia that it will go away because people will lose interest, but it only evolved into rumors about Jia dating both Kang and Gang Yu. Kang promised to fix the rumors, but he did nothing to stop it. Soon after, Jia was about to walk into a room when she witnessed Kang spreading those scandalous rumors about her. Jia was so shocked that she wasn't angry. To try and not make it worse, Jia tried to get along with everyone, studied hard and dedicated herself to student council work, but it didn't work. Her friends stopped hanging out with her and people she's never met started being friendly with her, probably to try and hook up with her because they think she's easy. Gang Yu was the only person who believed in her. But in the end it didn't matter because Jia broke up with him because she didn't want to cause him trouble. Jia didn't know how to fix it because she has to prove something never happened, which is impossible, because it's her word against an unstoppable and constantly evolving rumor. One day, Jia was walking in the rain with a cigarette when Kang pulled up and offered to take her out for drinks because he heard she broke up with Gang Yu. This was the breaking point for Jia. She picked up a brick, got on top of Kang's car and hurled it at Kang's windshield. Jia decided that if she wanted to put an end to the empty rumors, she'd have to make a real one. One where she is a madwoman. Jia wasn't proud of it and decided to drop out of college, which brings us to the present at the cafe, where she still isn't good at dealing with people. A prime example of this is this customer who ordered a cafe latte and got mad when she got a cafe latte instead of a vanilla latte. Instead of trying to make the customer admit their mistake by providing evidence from the CCTV, Jia decided that the best course of action was to keep her head down and make the vanilla latte. This is why Jia is conflicted about her situation with Mincheol. She doesn't know if saying nothing is better than telling Mincheol the truth about what happened with Gang Yu, because it might make it worse. The workday is over and it's raining. Neither Jia nor Nari brought their umbrellas because the weather forecast said it wasn't going to rain, so they borrowed umbrellas customers forgot in the cafe. But Jia doesn't need it because Mincheol is here with one. This prompts Nari to joke about Jia paying double her taxes, and Mincheol is concerned that Jia didn't pay her taxes this year. Jia and Mincheol walk home, and the lady next to them is posting about how stupid Mincheol and Jia are for sharing an umbrella when they have two. Suddenly, a car zooms by and splashes water on them. Mincheol blocks it with his umbrella and keeps Jia safe. But the lady next to them got soaked, which is the punishment she deserves for talking badly about Mincheol. Back at home, Mincheol creates a calming mood and uses various devices to make Jia relax and become sleepy. Jia doesn't understand what Mincheol is trying to do, but he doesn't either because he's following a YouTube tutorial. Mincheol is supposed to turn on classical music to create a calming mood, but instead turns on Indian music, which makes her less sleepy. Jia decides to pretend to sleep by fake snoring, and Mincheol can't believe it worked. Jia opens her eyes later to see Mincheol trying to hypnotize Jia with the coin, trying to make her obey his every order. Mincheol was supposed to do this before Jia went to sleep and desperately tries to find other methods. But he can't find any, so he commits to the method. But Mouse tries to play with the coin because it looks like a cat toy. After moving Mouse, Mincheol finds a new method and shines an extremely bright light into Jia's eyes as if she's being interrogated in a crime documentary. Jia can't handle the light, but before she opens them, Mincheol realizes the light is supposed to be dim and not pointed directly into her eyes. After giving Mouse a snack, Mincheol says that Jia will fall into a deep slumber, and on the count of 3, she will confront the past she has that she struggles to discuss with others. At this moment, Jia realizes that Mincheol actually did care about her past and set this whole thing up so they could talk about it without hurting their relationship. Mincheol counts to 3 and asks what Jia sees in front of her. Jia sees nothing because her eyes are closed, but thinks she should pretend to say something for Mincheol's sake. Before she gets the chance, Mincheol says she should see nothing because she has no uncomfortable secrets and did nothing wrong, and that he believes in her. This makes Jia remember a time in middle school where she was being punished when she hadn't done anything wrong, but was blamed for breaking a window, and she couldn't get out of it because she was seen as a troublemaker. This is when Mincheol stands up for her and professes that Jia didn't do it and that he will find the real culprit. This brought Jia to tears and she wakes up crying. Jia decides to get up and lay down next to Mincheol, who was sleeping. The focus briefly shifts to the bench in Mincheol's room ready to be used for some reason, and then back to Mincheol being confused why Jia is here. Jia doesn't know why either, so she cutely says that she had a scary dream. Mincheol is terrified because he thinks he caused it and goes back to sleep. Jia doesn't like that, so she makes Mincheol say quote unquote, "Oh no, our little baby had a bad dream." So Mincheol says exactly that, and Jia instantly regrets it because it's cringe. Mincheol offers his back to Jia to calm her down, and she accepts. Jia starts to make it seem like she's opening up about something, but then suddenly starts tickling Mincheol. Jia continues by asking if Mincheol wants to ask her anything else he's curious about because he was acting strange earlier. Mincheol thinks Jia is referring to the hypnosis and says that even if she's hiding something right now, she will eventually get close enough to him to tell her because that is the type of person Jia is. Jia climbs onto Mincheol's back while asking him where he learned to say stuff like that. Jia tries to kiss Mincheol, but her hands slip down and she feels a long formation akin to the Leaning Tower of Pisa. They separate and are both embarrassed. An awkward silence fills the room, but it is broken when their hands eventually meet and they start kissing. They stop and Jia quickly moves Mincheol's hair aside, and after admiring her work, she immediately moves it back by patting his head. Jia notices that Mincheol's heart is beating fast and he admits that he's nervous. So nervous that his skin is hot. So hot that if you were to crack an egg on his face, it would instantly cook. Jia faces her back to Mincheol and questions why she's done all of this. Everything in their relationship, from their marriage to coming to his room today, was her idea. Jia just wishes that Mincheol would take initiative for once, but can't get herself to say it and starts to leave. When she reaches the door, Mincheol slams his hand next to her face and asks who allowed her to leave. In true kidnapper fashion, Mincheol picks Jia up, puts her on the bed, and starts nibbling on her shoulder. Jia wants Mincheol to stop, but since she started it, he refuses and comments how he's been holding back this whole time. Gia has also been holding back and thinks today might be the day it happens. Mincheol tries to take off his shirt but he's so jacked that he struggles to do so. So Mincheol rips off his shirt like a madman and says he won't hold back anymore. Gia tells him to continue, so Mincheol starts unbuttoning Gia's shirt. Mincheol starts to kiss Gia while pinning her to the bed and then moves to her neck. When Gia realizes her shirt is almost completely unbuttoned, she tries to cover up in embarrassment. Gia jokingly says that maybe Mincheol learned this from YouTube, but when Mincheol goes to grab a certain contraceptive from the desk, Gia realizes this is no time to joke around. Gia and Mincheol had remained children up until this moment, but today, they shared an adult exchange. However, when Gia wakes up saying she'll never do it again and thinks it was all a dream, but she knew it wasn't when she woke up next to Mincheol. But that doesn't matter because it's 8:30 a.m. and they're late for work. Gia tries to get out of bed, but is stopped because her back hurts. Instead of consoling Gia, Mincheol comments how the weather is nice and suggests she skip work and stay at home today. This prompts Gia to blankly stare at Mincheol as if she's lagging. Mincheol tries to get her to say something, but it doesn't work. So he tries to kiss her and Gia punches him and goes to get ready for work. But she can't because of her back pain. So Gia goes to the laundromat to wash the sheets and calls Yenju to call out sick. Yenju is skeptical, so she video calls Gia, and when Gia mentions her back pain and she remembers that Gia is newly married, she puts two and two together and allows the sick leave. Gia tries to deny it even though that's exactly what happened. But this conversation gives her flashbacks from last night and she gets embarrassed. While Gia can't even go to work, Mincheol is completely fine. If you were to ask him why, he would say that he has that bedroom cardio because he trains more than you. Gia doesn't know how to handle the situation because she can barely look at Mincheol, so she hides in her room when Mincheol gets home. Gia references their agreement to prevent Mincheol from coming into her room. But Mincheol plays in a no reverse card by saying that the contract says that they need to talk it out, resulting in him opening the locked door and sending Gia flying. Gia thought he somehow broke down the door because it was locked, but he really just used his spare key. Mincheol drags Gia out while she complains how this isn't allowed, but Mincheol says that Gia has entered his room when she wanted many times before. This reminds Mincheol of a prank Gia played on him many years ago. In class, Gia wrote Gia's property on his arm. In hindsight, this is embarrassing. Gia and Mincheol sit down and eat snacks while Gia ponders how wonderful her marriage has been. She started working out and stopped smoking, but Mincheol dragged her out of her room an hour ago and hasn't said anything since. So, Gia asks Mincheol what he wanted to say to her. Mincheol reveals that he dragged Gia out of her room to ask her if she wants to see the new Spaghetti Man movie. Gia is confused but agrees and Mincheol books the tickets for the weekend. Suddenly, Mincheol says that he likes Gia and that's the real reason she's here. Gia is flustered but Mincheol continues by saying that he likes Gia. So, Gia tells Mincheol to prove it and she instantly regrets what she said because she could barely handle the activities last night. To prove it, Mincheol asks Gia to close her eyes, and when she opens them, she sees a ring on her finger and Mincheol asks Gia to marry him. Gia is confused because they're already married, but Mincheol meant they should become a real married couple rather than continue their contract marriage. Gia thinks this is too sudden, and the setting and mood isn't right for a proposal. So, Mincheol asks for the ring back so he can propose somewhere romantic like an expensive restaurant. But that's not what Gia meant and she questions why Mincheol wants to marry her because her personality isn't the best and she runs away from her problems. But the truth is that Mincheol liked Gia since they were kids and regrets not being able to tell her, so he's doing it now. So once again, Mincheol asks Gia to marry him and Gia vows to be respectful and accepts. In response, Mincheol does a handstand instead of a bow to show his level of respect. Their marriage is final, but Gia is still embarrassed about last night. So, Gia suggests they do it again and Mincheol immediately goes to take a shower to get ready. As Mincheol carries Gia away to the bedroom, Gia realizes that her real married life starts today. This is the end of Season 1, which is Chapter 80 of Maybe Meant to Be, also known as Match Made in Heaven, and there won't be more chapters out for a while. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to like and subscribe.